We need a ceasefire. We need those hostages returned. We need Gaza opened up so that humanitarian relief can flow in, and we need to be pushing the parties toward a permanent peace in the region.
Hey, Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live for the first time, actually. This is our debut on Wednesdays. Usually we're here Tuesdays. Thank you very much. We're usually here Tuesdays and Fridays. We're very happy people came down. We didn't know if people knew we were here, but we're here. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from now on. And to celebrate, Jim, at 2 o'clock, we have a cake from the great Flour Bakery.
We do?
Yes, thank you very much.
Fabulous.
Sandra brought in a cake for if you're around at 2 o'clock, you're going to get a great piece of cake to celebrate from Flour Bakery. We're back on Friday, of course, and next Tuesday, Ask the Mayor. Michelle Wu will be here for Ask the Mayor from 1 to 2, taking our questions and yours. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Marjorie. You're now joined by the only person more excited that we're at the library on Wednesdays than us. That is actually national security expert Julia Kayyem. It's true, by the way. She's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and her latest book is The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. Hello, Juliet, and welcome.
I'm so thrilled to be here. Hi, everyone.
Thrilled to have
Thank you.
Well,
it's so lively.
Isn't it great? It's beautiful.
Yes, and
beautiful.
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
And the Newsfeed Cafe is wonderful, too.
Fabulous.
So, no surprise, Nikki Haley has struggled so far in the presidential race. She dropped out this morning. Here is what she had to say, announcing that she is suspending her campaign.
But the time has now come to suspend my campaign. I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that. I have no regrets. In all likelihood, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee when our party convention meets in July. I have always been a conservative Republican and always supported the Republican nominee. But on this question, as she did on so many others, Margaret Thatcher provided some good advice when she said, quote, "Never just follow the crowd. Always make up your own mind."
Could you wake me when she's done speaking?
Yeah. Well,
oh my God.
It sounds like she's going to be endorsing Donald Trump any moment now. But
we should be fair to her. Mm-hmm. She says he's got to come around, prove to.
That's right. He has to earn their vote. It's up to Donald Trump, she said, to earn our votes. But it does sound to me like she's going to endorse him any moment. What do you think?
Oh my gosh, my first words and I cough. Hello, everyone. Is this that other Donald Trump that everyone thinks exists, that somehow he's going to be able to moderate and be more civil and less insurrection-y? And it's hilarious. Like, there's the one good thing about Donald Trump is his consistency. It's not like he's going to change. He's never changed in his life. So, look, Nikki Haley took a bet. Which was that she would be close to Trump until she was the last person standing next to him, and then turn against him. It didn't work, but that was clearly her strategy. The question, I think, when I look back at her campaign is, was she the one person, much more so than Chris Christie, who could have early on... Yes, you know what I'm about to say. Early on, aligned. Yeah. Not even like the unhappy Republicans, the independents, the suburban women, and the Democrats who just like to be nervous about Joe Biden because that's what we do.
But it was like perfect bookends. She was as weak this morning about her criticisms of Donald Trump's threat to democracy as she was when she began her campaign.
And I want to compare that to Asa Hutchinson, who was just on CNN, but was also on Morning Edition this morning. Former, also presidential nominee.
We had him over in New Hampshire, yeah.
I mean, like, there's no... he's thought about it. I mean, and that was, I think, is so thoughtful about him, is he said, look, the border, I don't agree with him. Like, the border is also a threat to our democracy. This is also a threat. He's like, but Donald Trump himself is a threat to our democracy. And I think and then he's not going to endorse him. I don't know if he goes as far as to say he's going to vote for Joe Biden.
No, in fact, he said on NPR this morning he would not vote for Joe Biden.
Not. Okay.
But he was not dilly-dallying with Donald Trump. I wanted to spend a minute and play a little sound from two endorsers of Donald Trump. First, we will hear the foul-mouthed Marjorie Taylor Greene last night at Mar-a-Lago. And then we will hear what a guy who endorsed him this morning had to say about the guy he just endorsed right after January 6th. Marjorie Taylor Greene,
yes.
And then Mitch McConnell. Here it is.
And can you tell me why so many people that support Donald Trump love conspiracy theories, including yourself?
Well, let me tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist, and the left and the media spreads more conspiracy theories. We like the truth. We like supporting our Constitution, our freedoms, and America first. So,
what about Jewish space lasers? Tell us about Jewish space.
No, why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers? And really, why don't you off? How about that?
She said F off, was Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now here's Mitch McConnell, again, not endorsing Trump as he did this morning, but speaking about Trump after the attempted insurrection.
There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it. The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president. And having that belief was a foreseeable consequence of the growing crescendo of false statements, conspiracy theories, and reckless hyperbole.
And as a result, I support him for his reelection.
I know. Is that how that
How
ends?
do you live with yourself?
I don't know.
Even when you're leaving.
I have long thought that on January, I think, what was that, January 7th or 8th?
Shortly after.
That McConnell and the Republicans had a very, very strong window to eradicate their party and therefore the American public from the madness that we have had the last 4 years. He folded soon after because he sees where the base is, but he had that moment, which you just played, and then he's retracted. So I've said a lot of times over the last couple of years, because I do view yesterday as the beginning of, the sort of last election in some ways, or the first or the last election, that yesterday marks the beginning of a campaign in which the future of our stability as a democracy really is going to be put to the test, not just on voting day, but before that, given what we know is going to happen and how Trump will run his campaign. And I don't feel sorry for the Republicans. Until someone emerges from that party who puts to rest the idea that the election frauds, the insurrection, the use of violence, the threats of violence against public officials, they are going to be the party that they are. And that's why I laugh about Nikki Haley. Like, I'm like, where have you been the last 4 years? This is your party, and until someone can either form a new party or get that insurrectionist, violent element out of the party, that is the GOP. And
That is not only the GOP, but it bears mentioning that defendant Trump is leading in the New York Times Siena poll, Joe Biden by 5 points, 48 to 43.
Nikki Haley might have done better if she were not anti-choice.
So this is interesting.
She is anti-choice, and that's going to be a big issue remaining.
It's sort of
in the election.
outside my lane, but since it was after Super Tuesday, and I do believe the general election begins today, you know how sometimes Democrats are sort of out to lunch about the impact of the border on independent voters, and sort of we don't take safety and security seriously enough. Like, Democrats like me who are in the safety and security realm are constantly yelling that we need to take it more seriously. I think the Republicans are out to lunch about Dobbs and IVF. I think so. I mean, you look at this polling, and if, I am confident, but I'm not going to be cocky. I'm confident that if the Biden people play Dobbs correctly, and the IVF decision and everything else of which, basically this is about your daughters, it's going to be very hard for them to get suburban women. There's no candidate that's going to appeal to them.
But you know what does worry me a little bit? The 16-week thing that Trump is talking about.
Yeah.
Because to some
Where's
people...
you how? What do you mean?
Because to some people, that's not
That's a reasonable
unreasonable.
compromise.
It's actually probably the...
And I worry about that a lot.
Yeah.
That when you look at polling on abortion, there's that so-called squishy middle.
Can I just say something about Trump? He said it once.
Yeah.
And then
Well, he hasn't said it publicly, even. He said it to his supporters.
And and he won't remain consistent. He is going to have to answer the question: do you support a federal anti-abortion ban?
Correct.
Okay.
And that could be...
Do you know how he's going to answer?
I hope he's going to say yes.
Yeah, he will say yes. He has to.
But wait a second. Can we stay with that for a second? As of the moment, I would say the likelihood of there being presidential debates is almost non-existent.
Probably true.
The likelihood of Donald Trump doing an interview with CNN or MSNBC or the New York Times is probably close to non-existent. So who's going to, other than yelling the question at him?
Biden is going to step up his game. I mean, people have to understand about prescription drugs. They have to understand about Obamacare. They have to understand about all these issues the CHIPS bill, all these things that people don't even know about. Their messaging has to begin,
I think. Just sort of disagree with that.
With which?
I think this is the Dobbs election. And it has to be. You think?
Could you move your mic a little closer to your mouth?
You think that's bad?
Thank you.
I mean, you thought Dobbs was bad. What if he gets 2 more seats on the court?
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically these are my politics, but and outside my lane. But to me, if everything ends up being about women and reproductive freedom, Biden will be playing the smart game here. Like,
I hope so.
The independent voter is not going to be swayed by Ukraine, I think.
Well, can we talk about another issue that is not trending terribly well for Joe Biden at the moment? 9% of people in Massachusetts did the no preference thing, which is not a huge number. 20% in Minnesota. However, at the same time that I'm assuming we are trying like hell to get this temporary ceasefire to happen and hopefully make it a permanent ceasefire, we're airdropping meals. And I haven't read one story, including from the most pro-Joe Biden person, who says this goes into anybody's hands except like cartels. They're going to sell it at a lofty price to starving people in Gaza.
I'm so torn about this because obviously any humanitarian relief for civilians, which is what this clearly is, given how many Palestinians have died at the hands of the Israeli army or the Israeli military, 30,000 I think we're at now, or maybe those are Palestinian numbers, but somewhere between 20 and 30,000, you need food there. So the airdrops are good compared to nothing. They're such an embarrassment. We don't do airdrops in friendly territories, which presumably this is Israel, right? It's an occupied territory. This is an embarrassment. And
you should explain that a little more. My understanding is, I think it's what you're trying to say, is airdrops are done when a force that is present, like the IDF, like Israel, are enemies.
Yes.
And the only way you can get supplies in is drops.
Right.
Israel is our ally.
Israel's our ally. It is blocking humanitarian relief. And look, I can talk about Egypt as well. I'm just saying that as in terms of these drops, they are, according to the White House, not me, in response to Israel's failure to guarantee humanitarian relief through air, sea, and land. This also followed, of course, this tragedy of the data still coming out, but this tragedy in which Israel also, because it's an occupied territory, did not sustain safety and security for starving people. Everyone knows that they're desperate. And something happened. Presumably shots were fired, and we think over 100 Palestinians are dead. This is an embarrassment to the United States, but part of the growing fissure between the United States and Netanyahu. Not Israel, but Netanyahu. And now you're starting to see the White House finally do what it should have done, which was so obvious 2 months ago, which is begin to create fissures in a very weak coalition government for a very weak Netanyahu.
Well, they have
We're allowed to do that.
Can we stay on that for a minute?
I have a question about
sure.
it, though. I don't know why it is so outrageous for him to say away conditions on our military aid. Why is that so?
They do have some conditions now. I think that's the crazy politics of Israel, right? I mean, it's.
But what about our politics?
Yeah, no,
I mean, what about
agree.
the moral
Well, I
high
think
ground,
this White House is finally coming to terms that the Democratic Party is more complicated, more pluralistic, more humanitarian focused, and doesn't like occupying nations. And that's not anti-Semitic. I mean, this is the crazy thing.
I don't think that's it. I think it's about hearing about starving children.
That's right. I mean, that is
on television day
and they're
after day.
willing to criticize Israel. Huge. I mean, you saw the votes in Michigan, but you see it within the Democratic Party, and then other wings of the Democratic Party call any of that anti-Semitism, and it's so shameful the way that word, I'm sorry, has been used for really important public policy debates. It's just sort of this. Oh, well, that's It's not anti-Semitic.
One of the good things that I think is happening, and I think this is what you were referencing, is we mentioned the other day with Charlie Sennett that the guy who is likely, from the war cabinet, the guy who is likely to succeed Netanyahu, who all experts say has no chance of staying in office when this thing is over, hopefully the sooner the better, was in Washington the other day meeting with Kamala Harris and others. So hopefully we get to a point pre-November where Benny Gantz, that's his name, right? Gantz says, should I be the next prime minister, I support a two-state solution. Now, having said that, I'm not sure he does, but there still is time to rescue this situation. But the starvation that you're both talking about can't wait. I mean, maybe the two-state solution can wait a few months to talk about what happens after Israel's out of Gaza. But the starvation can't. We're talking to Juliette Kayyem. Juliette, I don't understand at all what happened. This is right up your alley. Speaking of lanes, this huge cyber attack in the healthcare world. Could you start from the beginning and tell us what happened and why?
Yes, I have a piece that should be out or coming out in the Atlantic. What's the name of the? Oh my gosh, I'm having a senior moment.
I'll tell you in a second.
Trust. Okay, so let me just tell you. Change Healthcare. So let me just tell you what's going on. Change Healthcare is a company that you've never heard of before, and controls about 50%, or controls is the wrong word. It is the transmitting service for about 50% of all healthcare. Billing and insurance and CVS and all that stuff. It gets a ransomware attack sometime in late February. We believe, I'm just going to cite Wired magazine, that they actually paid it. 20 plus million.
A ransom.
Okay. And this is where it gets interesting.
Wow.
Right. So that's a big one, because normally ransomware is lower because you just want to get the money and run. Within the ransomware community, there is, and all this is reporting from Wired, is there's a fight between two of the groups that succeeded about who gets what portion of the money. So they are holding up the fix until they can resolve that issue. Meanwhile, this service is down.
What's the consequence of the service being down, and why do I care?
You will go to a pharmacy and they may not be able to determine whether you have insurance to cover the cost of that. So what was $80 might have been $10 with insurance. They won't be able to prove it. It's also billing by doctor's offices, hospitals. Within the medical community, this is like, hair on fire. I'm not sure why we're not getting that yet. We probably will, because there's probably a little bit of delay. The whole system's down. This is another instance where the transit, I call it the pipeline companies. We never hear of them. Colonial Pipeline, healthcare pipelines. The pipeline companies are extremely vulnerable. And if they are attacked, the consequences, cyber attack, the consequences end up being quite physical. So remember Colonial Pipeline a couple years ago, same thing. No one had ever heard of this company. It's in Georgia. It actually manages about 50% of the pipelines from the Gulf of Mexico to the East Coast, and the consequences of them not being prepared for a cyber attack impacted our economy, because all these companies can do is turn the lights out. That's where we are now with change. So it's going to be, it's still not up.
So Marjorie and I get stuck on things, and generally our texting at night is about the thing that we both got stuck on a particular day, and it's too embarrassing to tell you what it is most days. I'll tell you what the latest one is Marjorie will text her, I'll text her and say, did you see that when the blank newspaper is writing about the Smokehouse Creek fire in Texas, that it took till the 37th paragraph till they mentioned the impact of climate change on this. Tell us what the status is of one of the largest wildfires in American history in Texas, and the role that climate change played and those sort of things.
Right, so the Panhandle, so obviously there's less rain, the air is drier, these fires are now out of control. So this is in the Panhandle, so we're not, if you were watching Texas TV, you would see this a lot. It's the largest wildfire. I believe as of last night, 40 or 50% is under control, so it's not growing. This will impact crops, which will impact our economy. This will impact livestock, which obviously impacts our economy. And it's Texas, and Texas seems to, have these weather events. They had massive freezing just 2 years ago, as if these flukes are not a sign of a systemic issue. But the fires are because of the lack of moisture in the soil, and then you just create what's called fire ladders, and this stuff is once it starts, it just flows through.
So you're a disaster person, and I mean that's the world in which you live. I haven't read one account or one other than a couple of nuts, maybe Governor Abbott, who are denying the impact of climate change. Why is the media, even in 2024, so reluctant to mention how the dryness, the wind, all of that were accentuated by climate change? What's the problem?
It's just, it is.
And this is the New York Times.
Right,
it is.
The New York Times is failing us in many regards recently, and it is how do I want to say it? It's like talking about someone dying from lung cancer and not saying they smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day.
Perfect.
Right? I mean, it's just like basically like that's part of the narrative of what's going on. If you're a young reporter now, I honestly believe climate change will be part of every single beat. It will be part of schooling because our kids are going to have asthma. It's going to be part of Medicare. It's going to be part of immigration. It's going to be part of military readiness. It's going to be part of why and how we fight wars. It's going to be part of disaster management and real estate and taxes and insurance. It is the only story that I can, with confidence say in the 21st century, if you are a young reporter, this will touch on every aspect. Even I was going to say even entertainment, but I don't know if that's true. Academy Awards.
I would say it's probably not true.
But you know what really drives me nuts, though, in weather stories, that it is not almost in the first graph or the second graph, so people understand this, because they point out in this story, way at the end, it's the third from the end graph, and a very long story says that that the fire risk is the fire season starts earlier and lasts longer because of increasing temperatures.
In California, there's no fire season anymore. So in your adaptability, it's all
those
year round.
horrible fires in
and
California?
then everyone has, I say this as if everyone follows the news I do. Everyone knows that this is going to be a rocking hurricane season. Everyone is predicting this one because it's an El Nino year. And so we will be starting hurricane season in just a few weeks or June. And that also is going to be something impacting the Gulf of Mexico, although the trajectories right now, and I'm pretty confident in them in terms of the trajectories. It actually is going to be a wild summer on the East Coast. It's much more so than the Gulf of Mexico. So we have that to look forward to.
So we're going to have a rainy summer?
I think so.
Oh, on that note, you're our first Wednesday guest at the library.
Yay!
It was a thrill to have you.
I'm so thrilled. I will be here every Wednesday except for back at noon, but I want to thank the Lennox Hotel people for keeping my car warm.
They're
fabulous.
We love them.
Somewhere else
Juliet
to be
Kayyem, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Juliet Kayyem. We have been speaking to Juliet Kayyem. She, of course, where is Juliet Kayyem's list here? She's former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and her latest book, The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. And that's about where we are, I would say, on a daily basis. Up next, we'll open the lines to get your thoughts on the uneventful but very consequential Super Tuesday elections. How'd you vote? What did you think of the results? What did you think of Nikki Haley, Donald Trump? Did you vote no preference here in Massachusetts? Your calls and texts up next. The number is 877-301-8970.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. And yes, again, it is our first Wednesday here in a really long time. And starting today, we'll be here 3 days a week. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We're back on Friday, and the next Tuesday, Mayor Wu joins us from 1 to 2. Super Tuesday's over. Trump's biggest opponent, Nikki Haley, as we talked about, dropped out at 10 a.m. this morning. The former president, defendant Trump, essentially cleaned house, winning nearly all the delegates that were up for grabs. So we're full steam ahead for the general election with two older men duking it out for the chance to be America's next president again. It's sort of 2020 all over again, except I think you can say we know exactly how both candidates will do their job in the Oval Office because they've both done it before. One of them tackled student loan debt as best he could, provided stimulus for people struggling during the pandemic, enacted the first serious gun control measures in decades, on, but obviously faces some opposition, growing opposition to United States handling of Israel's war in Gaza. The other candidate faces 91 felony charges, some for his involvement in an attempted insurrection. Has been found liable for sexual abuse and massive business fraud, but apparently his tough talk on things like immigration, etc., has great appeal to his supporters. So voters on both sides of the aisle are struggling with their options. The majority of Americans, as you know, didn't want this rematch to begin with, but that's what we've got, and we want to know what your reaction is the day after Super Tuesday. 877-301-8970. You know I've said this on the air, and I'm becoming a broken record. Is there something wrong with the system that keeps delivering candidates who the voters say overwhelmingly are not those who they want?
Well, I think the Democrats have a big problem listening to their voters because this has been going on for ages. People thinking that Biden is too old to run again. He shouldn't run again. And they were basically ignored during the Hillary Clinton race against Trump years ago. Second most unpopular person ever to run. And the Democrats stuck with her nonetheless. I mean, it was obvious that she was a very unpopular person, not as unpopular as Trump, but close, and she lost. So I think they don't seem to listen to their voters.
Did you just mentioned the age issue. Did you read reliable sources, the CNN media newsletter, Oliver Darcy, yesterday?
You told me about it. I usually read it. I didn't yesterday.
He had a really interesting point.
Yep.
He was saying that a lot of experts in the field of journalism were upset that the New York Times Siena poll asked the question about Joe Biden's age. And my immediate reaction to that was, what are they upset about? It's a totally relevant issue that a lot of people care about. But when I read further in the story, there was this guy from City University of New York who was a journalism professor who said something really interesting. If we're asking about age, which is clearly an issue with some, why are we not asking in these same polls is what do you think about Donald Trump's misogyny? in the wake of the E. Jean Carroll trial. What do you think of Donald Trump's racism, citing the way he talks about immigrants and others? And, you know, there's some merit to this thing. Even though I've been resistant to this notion, there is maybe it's subliminal in terms of the mainstream press, but I think with 8 months out, we've really got to do an examination of how we handle the Trump campaign, because it is unlike any other in the history of our country, and I would argue with a risk that is unlike any other in the history of our country.
Well, I would think some Trump voters, certainly not all, or maybe not even most, but I think some Trump voters are fine with racism and misogyny.
Of course, I'm sure they are.
I think it's not a problem. And I think Evan Osnos, the guy that wrote the book about
New Yorker,
about Biden, and has a piece in the New Yorker, did a long interview with him in the Oval Office. He did say, and this was encouraging, because I think people forget with Biden, who does look really old and he sounds really old. His voice has changed dramatically from 4 years, and certainly his gait has changed dramatically from 4 years before. But he said when you talk to him, you know, it's not like he's not thinking. It's not like his mind isn't working. He stumbles over words, and he has always been a gaffe machine, always, his entire career. If you looked up Joe Biden gaffe machine 30 years ago, you would see this list of his gaffes and mistakes.
We used to play them on the air here 2 decades ago.
And he's got a stuttering problem, which I'm sure has been made worse in his old age. But the important thing to me about his interview is that he said, you know, he didn't miss a date, he didn't miss a word, he didn't miss a thought, he didn't miss anything in that interview.
Yeah, but
I hope he's going to be good on Thursday night.
You were grasping for straws. The issue is not, in my opinion, how Joe Biden was, even though to me he is the only choice in this election. And by the way, we've been on the air 25 years. I don't think prior to an election in our 25 years, either of us has ever said, this is the person who should win that office. But I don't think there's ever been a candidate who threatens democracy, small d democracy, like Donald Trump does. But the issue with Joe Biden, so that because I don't think it's fair to be critical of those concerned about age, who, like me, who really support what he's done as a president. He's going to be 86 at the end of his second term. He's not going to be 81 talking to Evan Osnos, and that's old to have the toughest job in the world.
It's very old. I never thought he was going to run again. I believed him when he said he was going to be a bridge president. Then he changed his mind. And shame on him for changing his mind, and shame on his wife and his whole family. But it's too late now.
Well, I wouldn't say shame, but having said that,
they should have said, Joe,
Joe
enough.
Joe Biden's worst day, I would argue, in terms of his commitment to democracy and the Constitution, is better than Donald Trump's best day.
You just told me I was grasping at straws, Jim.
What?
You're grasping at now. When I was trying to defend
supporting democracy is a
when I was trying
straw?
to defend his mental state of affairs. Anyway, let's get to some calls here.
Paul in New
Bedford. Thank you for calling.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
I voted non-preference yesterday, just to put some light on that. I think I just wanted to get a point out there that the average U.S. citizen, it's kind of like living in the Matrix. And maybe it's great for our society that we all get its credit so that we can live this lifestyle that we think we need. But a lot of people are just lost and thinking that they're special. Maybe it's social media, and no one takes the time to follow these candidates, to research the racism that's behind Donald Trump. And we really, I don't know if it lies on public radio and reporters.
Well, can I stop you there? That I think is I am always happy to fault voters for not doing their work, but most voters are pretty busy people. The enemy, if there is one, vis-a-vis what you're talking about, Paul, is us. The responsible media has an obligation to inform the public about what's in front of them. And Marjorie has said this a lot lately. The media in general, and we're guilty sometimes too, spends far too much time on the horse race, on the polling, and far too little on the policy implications of a Biden, a Trump, a Haley, or anybody else. So your point is well taken, and we plead guilty, and we're going to try to do better over the next 8 months. Paul, thanks for your first call. We really appreciate it. Make another one. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Yeah, we do talk about the horse race much too much, but we should try to talk more about policy going forward, because we just talked about Texas, this wildfire. I mean, thousands of cattle and
million acres, I think.
Yeah,
it is.
they're burned to death, and now they have no food because the grass has all been burned to death. I mean, it's going to be the fire or flood. It's going to be our choice probably in about 2 years. I mean, we're running out of time here, and Donald Trump is a climate change denier, and he will help the fossil fuel industry do everything it can to prevent amelioration of climate change. Michelle from Charlestown, thank you for calling.
Hey, Michelle.
Hi, actually Charlton.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Charlton, sorry.
No worries. So, good morning. And so I don't know if you saw, WBR put out a really interesting article this morning that had a map of Massachusetts. And if you looked at how Republican voters voted in the state of Massachusetts, they made yellow circles, or the yellow color, for predominantly Haley voters, and they made red circles and more pink or mauve if it was closer. But if it was red, they were predominantly Trump voters.
And what was the takeaway?
I thought it was really. My takeaway was that from Natick and Newton and Wellesley and Brookline and all those towns in that center of Massachusetts, in those predominantly white, wealthy suburbs, they all voted for Haley, and they left Trump, and they're not voting for Trump. So why are rich white people not voting for Trump? And the poor, more middle class, lower wealth white people in the surrounding towns around Massachusetts are staying with Trump?
Is that a question for us, or is it a question?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think the answer is, Marjorie said this a lot. One of Donald Trump's great skills is he's one of the greatest faux populists in the history of the world, not just this country. And apparently, despite his record vis-a-vis working people in his first term, that appeal continues to exist. I can't explain it. By the way, Michelle, before you get worked into a frenzy over this, there are about 5 Republicans in Massachusetts.
8%.
It is an infinitesimally small number. So keep in mind what you're looking at in terms of how many people voted in the primary on the Republican side to begin with. Michelle, we'll check it out. Thank you for the call.
When you talk to Trump voters, and I've talked to some up in New Hampshire most recently, and reporters are talking to Trump voters all the time, there's a lot of sense that he listens to us. He hears us. He hears our complaints. He's not insulting us. He's not calling us deplorables. He's not looking down on us. Those kinds of things.
Well, he said, I mean, the laughable line that obviously plays a good example is, they're not prosecuting me for insurrection. They're prosecuting you. They're not going against me for sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll. They're going after you. And when you watch the crowd, the head nodding when he says this kind of thing, it's just, it's incredible. Michelle, thank you for the call. 877-301-8970. The only good news in the last couple of days in the political front, I mentioned this the other day. Had you ever heard the term double haters?
Yeah, yes, you mentioned it to me.
It was in the New York Times Siena poll.
Yep.
Double haters are people who can't stand essentially either of the candidates. That's a simplified version. And the person who won among double haters in the polling in 2016 and 2020 was elected president. And the person who is leading amongst the double haters in 2024? Joe Biden.
Oh, Joe Biden.
Yes.
Oh.
It's good news, I said.
Oh, good. Oh, that's good news.
Thank you.
Okay. Here's Angela from Rentham. I think we can all hear your pain, Angela. She says, I'm sick about the fact that defendant Donald Trump is running again. It's like a nightmare coming back. I feel like a victim of post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm being triggered. I might have to turn off all TV and radio until after the election. If my nightmare comes true and he's elected again, I might need to stop watching television and radio for the next 4 years. It's going to affect affect my mental health. I can't take it.
Well, you're
what,
laughing,
Angela. You are speaking for tens of thousands, if not millions, of Americans who are in the same boat as you are. I mean, you remember how it felt in 2016 when you woke up in the morning and you realized he was going to be the next president of the United States? I couldn't believe it.
Well, there are many more millions, Marjorie, who are waking up not with that feeling, but cheering every single word that comes out of his mouth.
I know.
And by the way, it's one thing when a CNN chooses not to carry a speech of candidate Trump. As of today, he is the de facto nominee of the Republican Party.
That's right.
I think it's going to be formalized a week from yesterday. After that point, well, obviously, hopefully they're going to do critical coverage. I don't mean critical like negative, but critical meaning parsing what he has to say and doing fact-checking. He's the nominee of one of the two major parties, and he's going to get extensive coverage, as unfortunately he should.
Do you want to hear a little bit of his victory speech last night?
I would love to hear that.
Mar-a-Lago?
Yes,
Okay.
I would. It'd make me feel really good.
I'm sorry, Angela, you may have to turn off the radio at the particular moment because we're going to play a little bit of Trump's speech last night in Florida at Mar-a-Lago.
Our country was coming together, and now we have a very divided country. We have a country that a political person uses weaponization against his political opponent. Never happened here. It happens in other countries, but they're third world countries. And in some ways, we're a third world country. We're a third world country at our borders, and we're a third world country at our elections. And we have to stop that.
Now, let's just parse that. There were 3 points he made, right?
Yeah, what were they?
Weaponization against his political opponent. He's complaining about that. He tried to do that over and over again with the Department of Justice when he was president of the United States, going after his political enemies. So what he's accusing Biden of is something he did.
That's part of his brilliance, by the way.
Then he's talking about we're a third world country at our borders. Now, you all know he's been talking about the borders endlessly. Joe Biden and finally they negotiated a deal on the borders. Toughest
what happened
border
to that deal?
We had to get rid of it because Trump didn't want to give Joe Biden a victory.
That's right.
So that was lie number 2. And the third world country at our elections, and he was the one that was trying to overthrow the election with a bunch of lies and false electors and all this kind of stuff. So what he does is he says, it's like my looking at you. You're got a red shirt on, and I got a blue shirt on, and I'm going, Jim, that blue shirt of yours is horrible, or that projecting what I'm doing onto the other person. I didn't explain that.
So how do you feel about that?
You know what I'm saying?
I say this all the time, and every time I talk about the American people, which it worries me much more even than Donald Trump worries me. Your response is always Fox News bubble, Fox News.
Yeah, that's a big part
bubble.
of it.
Okay, 48 to
Fox
43,
News, Sinclair
roughly half the
Television.
American people said to the New York Times last week that Donald Trump should be the next leader of the United States of America. What do you say about those people?
I think that he is a very effective liar. And people buy it. We have been conned by many charlatans over and over in this country, and this is the biggest con of all. And unfortunately, many people are being conned by it, or they like his policies. And that would be people who, I guess, well, I don't know what to say about them.
Well, I know what you're about to say, and you stopped yourself. 48% of people are not misogynists, racist, anti-immigrant. There's a piece of that.
That's right.
There's something bigger than just the hate that he spews that draws people to him.
I think it's part of that cult thing where he's hearing me. He's hearing my problems. He's listening to me. He's not calling us deplorables. He's not looking down on us like all these West Coast and East Coast elites who think we're a bunch of, as Hillary Clinton put it, deplorables. I think it's
isn't Joe
Biden
is little like an elite and more like a working class guy than virtually any president in our I'm serious, in our lifetime?
Well, I think
he's a Scranton, Pennsilvania hardscrabble, a term I've never used, kid who
I think until he became the president and wrote books and she wrote books, they had the lowest amount of money of anybody in the Senate. He was in the Senate for like 45 years. Anyway, we're talking about this really uplifting election that we're looking at for the next few months. And Angela, I'll think of you every day. Angela from Rentham, I think she captured the feeling of dread.
How are you going to do this for 8 months?
I don't know. I may have to take a leave and go to some psychiatric facility for a few weeks.
Let's not make fun of that.
Here,
okay.
I'm not making fun of it. I'm just trying to be real, Jim. Trying to be real.
No, I'm glad.
Okay, you're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. More of your calls and texts coming up.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. Once again, our first Wednesday here in a long time. We'll be here every Wednesday now, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Next Tuesday, the mayor joins us, and at 2 o'clock, if you are still here, and we hope you are, we have cake from the best bakery in town, in my opinion, flour, to celebrate our return to the library. Now, our staff just did some research, Marjorie. Mm-hmm. They identified 3 people in Needham who we have not yet depressed to tears. So our goal in the next 8 minutes and 16 seconds, is there anybody in the audience we have not depressed in the first 25? Nobody, thank you. Our mission is accomplished. 877-301-8970.
Okay, here's a couple of texts.
Oh, good.
I'm a Democrat disgusted by Biden's lack of guts over Gaza. I voted uncommitted yesterday. I think we had, what was it, 9% in
9% here.
20% in Minnesota.
Yeah.
To show my disapproval, as letters to the president don't seem to make any difference. I'm exasperated by Biden's decision to run again, even though I'd obviously defend him. I defended him until Gaza. Of course, my vote will be anti-Trump in November. Sad. Thanks for covering this. And then we have, this is another text. This is the world you boomers brought us all. Bernie would have smoked Trump in 2016 and 2020. But no, the centrist boomers had to say Bernie is too radical. Here we are in 2024 with a race you people born before 1970 have delivered to us all. Thanks a lot. Sincerely. A millennial who fears for his future and the futures of his 2 children. I mean, Bernie doesn't look so radical now, does he?
Well, also, I think he's the exact same age as Joe Biden, and you see him on television. He is like bouncing around kind of deal. You know?
Well, look at Trump for all the cheeseburgers. You know, he's got no problem getting up there and going on and on.
What are you talking about? He doesn't know who Nancy Pelosi is from Nikki Haley.
But
He's slurring his words 2 nights ago. He can't get his sentence out.
I know, but he doesn't look.
Well, he's more energetic.
He's bigger. I guess the key is to put on some weight. Maybe if Joe Biden gained like 50 pounds, he wouldn't look so frail. We'd all like him better.
What was it when his doctor, who's now a member of Congress, actually the guy, I can't think of his name, he was also the doctor for Barack Obama, which is a little bit odd before Trump. What did he say that Trump was, like 6'3" and 210 or something?
Yeah, and he wasn't. He was 6'2", I guess, but didn't. Chuck Todd, great line about Chuck Todd. He said, the doctor basically said, okay, you want to be 6'3", you're 6'3". We don't care. He also said he had such great genes that he was going to live to be 200. Something to look forward to.
Remember one of the highlights of our 25 years on the air is, you remember a couple of years, there was the hippie doctor, the Woodstock doctor,
That's right.
who was his doctor in New York City. It said the healthiest president in the history of the world if he's elected.
Jackson.
And it turns out, no.
Was the other one.
Oh, Jackson was the guy from Texas, that's right. But do you remember we learned that Donald Trump actually dictated the letter to the doctor? Now, what was the highlight of our careers a couple of years ago? I'll give you a hint, Newton.
I don't remember.
The hippie doctor's ex-wife.
Oh, that's right.
Called us from Newton to vouch for what a good guy he was, despite allowing Trump to write his own letter, whatever it is.
Okay, Andrea from Boston. What do you think, Andrea?
Hey, Andrea.
Oh, hello. I was an election worker yesterday.
Oh, thanks for that. Great.
Oh.
And in our precinct, about 65% of the Republican votes went to Haley.
Wow.
However, they weren't really Republicans. So many of those people kind of came up and reluctantly, they were independents who took the Republican ballot, almost making an excuse like, this is the only time I've done this, but they so desperately wanted to vote against Trump. Those were the voters who, again, actual Republicans watch Fox or worse news outlets, and they do not hear anything about Trump's real actions.
Well, you're singing Marjorie's tune.
Andrea, you're absolutely right.
Thanks for being an election worker, by the way, Andrea. It takes courage these days, actually.
For all the people that were voting no preference yesterday because they're appalled about Biden and what he's not doing with Israel and Gaza, Trump was on Fox and Friends, and the host, Brian Kilmeade, asked him about the war, how Israel is fighting in Gaza, and Trump said, you got to finish the problem.
Yeah, what do you think?
Which to me
What do you think he
means-
meant?
Well, he's been a big ally of Netanyahu. I mean, he moved the capital of Israel. What I think he meant is
You slaughter a couple of thousand.
get rid of everybody in Gaza.
Palestinians.
I mean, so that's the thing to remember for people that did vote no a problem yesterday. I get it because I think it's terrible that Joe Biden hasn't done more, but this guy, I mean, he talked about nuclear weapons to fight hurricanes. Remember that when Trump was thinking we should put a few nukes in there and stop the hurricanes? Imagine what he might do with Gaza.
I'm nervous to raise this point because when I raise it, you unfortunately always have a good answer. And I know this is my second broken record of the day. You're a person who believes you have respect for women. You know that Donald Trump was found liable for what under Massachusetts law would be rape.
Don't go up.
Sexual abuse in New York.
Yeah.
And you say I can vote for him anyway, and I have deep respect for my female partner, daughters, whatever. And your explanation is all those people don't believe that he actually did it?
I think people disbelieve women constantly, and I don't know if it's still true, but back in my reporter days, in the 80s and 90s when I was covering rape trials, it was the standard line of the prosecutor that they prefer to get more men than women on a rape trial jury because women are harder on women than men are harder on women. Now, I don't know if that's true now and statistically true, but yeah, we had women all the time. Last time around 2016,
working class women,
and said these women are making it up. They were making it up. But people don't want to believe those kind of charges about anybody because we heard politicians in Massachusetts, including Ted Kennedy, didn't believe the kids in the Catholic Church years ago when this was happening. So anyway,
let's squeeze one more in before the break.
Irene in Rentham, thank you for calling.
Hey, Irene.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Well, I just, being a real estate agent and having had to have Corey checks if you want a license in Rhode Island, for instance. Corey check in order to be a 4-H leader, which I was for 8 years. If you're a Boy Scout leader, Girl Scout leader. Isn't it amazing how the President of the United States would not be able to be a leader of any of those groups, serve in any church Sunday school programs, but he can lead the country? It just amazes me. And
I hate to be fair here, Irene. He hasn't been convicted of crimes yet. He's just been found liable of $500 million of fraud and sexually abusing a woman in a civil proceeding.
In a civil procedure, but he
that
did
may be
it.
a disqualifier.
I don't know. They might not like that in the Corey check, Irene. I'm not sure.
Irene, Corey is criminal records. That's a brilliant call, Irene, and a wonderful way to end the hour. Thank you very much for making your point.
On a serious note, there are a significant number of Trump voters who say that if he were convicted of a crime, they couldn't vote for him. And so we have to thank our Supreme Court for doing everything they can to make it harder for a jury to vote on his guilt or innocence before the November election.
Well, I'll say what I said yesterday.
It's a disgrace.
Stealing the line, I think, from the New York Times, the Supreme Court majority decided to speed up the case that would be helpful to Trump, namely the Colorado challenge, and slow down the case that would hurt Trump, the immunity case. So I think it tells you where they are.
I'm happy to report that we are now moving on, Jim.
We are?
Yes, we are. We're not going to talk about the election anymore today. I don't think we are going to talk about it anymore today. Thank goodness. So, Angela, you can calm down there, wherever you called from before. Up next, we're going to talk to Trendy Casey, our sports authority. Dartmouth College, they're going to unionize their basketball team up there.
Big deal.
We're going to talk about Caitlin Clark, that superstar women basketball player is breaking all these records, and the latest episodes of Dynasty. This is all about the New England Patriots, which, of course, used to be a dynastic football team. Trendy Casey is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library.
From the time George W. Bush got this law passed all the way through to the day Joe Biden was sworn in, you know how many people in Massachusetts actually got their loans canceled under this program? 200.
Welcome back. Oops, I forgot. This is you.
It's okay, Jim. He is Jim Browdy. He talks a lot. I am Marjorie Egan. I listen as much as I can. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming.
Use applauding now, Jamie.
Streaming on youtube.com/GBH News and Facebook.com/GBH News. It is our first Wednesday here at the Boston Public Library. Thank people who came down here to the Boston Public Library. We are going to be here from now on.
They're going to get cake at 2 o'clock.
That's right, from Flower Bakery. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And to celebrate, as Jim just said, we have this cake. If you're still hanging around here, you're welcome to a piece. Back on Tuesday, the mayor of the city of Boston, Michelle Wu, will be with us from 1 to 2 to take our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim.
Hello, and before we introduce trending, I'm going to say I have some very good news for you because I know you're a little bit depressed about what's facing this country. I was just watching CNN during the news break. This is really great news. There are only 244 days till Election Day. And I did some math for you. That's 101 shows at the Boston Public Library, and then it's over. The election's over, and then democracy's over. Okay. In any case, no, I was only kidding.
It could be our last election. That's the big joke, right? This could be the last one. So
in any case, nothing more depressing for the rest of the show. Marjorie gave me direction. We're joined now at the BPL, by Trendy Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hello, Trendy Casey.
Hello. I got fitted for my Handmaid's Tale outfit right before I got here, just in case. I wanted to at least look, if I'm going to have to wear it, I might as well look good in it.
Yeah, exactly. That's where we're headed to, Handmaid's Tale, back into the future, or future into the back, or whatever
we don't
it is.
know.
But anyway, Dartmouth College, their basketball team has voted to unionize. Is this a trend, or what's this about? Or?
Well, it's the second time a university has done this. The Northwestern basketball team also did it, but theirs was struck down by a higher court. However, they argued on the grounds of something different. So the Dartmouth basketball team is arguing that they should get a wage, just like a cafeteria worker, of $20 an hour, that they are being, that they're being utilized, and that the school makes money off their backs, which makes them employees, not just student athletes. And the interesting thing about it is that more than any other type of institution, if you play sports at an Ivy League school, it's the only Division I schools where they do not give out athletic scholarships to athletes. You have to, I wouldn't say all the kids who get into the Ivy League schools would get in on their own merits.
You get a
little of a bump to get into the school. But you do not get an athletic scholarship. They help you in other ways with different academic scholarships.
And they
usually
don't take it away if you get hurt.
And they do not.
Which is a big deal.
Because obviously, in the Ivy's view, you are there to be a student athlete rather than an athlete student. But it's going to be interesting to see the ripple effect on this and whether or not it holds up in a higher court. It will have to face a Supreme Court, and then they go back. I think it's going to go for a National Labor Relations Board review as well. But yeah, they have unionized, and the other trickle-down effect is, and they brought this up in the article, these are basketball players, right? So that's considered a quote unquote revenue sport. Football, quote unquote revenue sport. In the Ivies, or at least in Hockey East, hockey would be considered a revenue sport. I mean, everybody's into, BC, Northeastern, BU right now, Harvard. So those types of sports. But what does this mean for, women's field hockey? What does it mean for men's wrestling? Like areas where you, one, might not get as much money from the name, image, and likeness. And two, where quite frankly, those other big money-making sports sort of trickle down to you. Like, how does this affect everybody? And then I brought this up, I think, the last time. How does it then also affect other extracurriculars? Like, if you're the lead in the school play in universities, I mean, at least when I was in school, there were school productions. Do you then get paid for being a part of the school production? If you are a stagehand or a producer or, director, an actor, an actress, this could have wide-ranging ramifications, I think, across extracurriculars.
Let me tell you, I think I can answer some of those questions. The regional director of the National Labor Relations Board, who ruled that they were employees, and that's the criterion. If you want to organize, you can't be a public employee under the National Labor Relations Act. There's another law. You have to be declared to be an employee, and there's certain elements of employeedom, for lack of a better expression. This Laura Sachs, who's the regional director, said Dartmouth players are employees because, one, they perform work that benefits the school.
Yep.
Two, the school holds significant control over their work. And here's the key. They don't need to just get direct payments. They receive compensation, she found, through equipment, lodging, tickets, and other factors. So it's a pretty broad ruling, actually. And I have to say, I think we all know the big time, mostly boys, some women, like Caitlin Clark, who we'll talk about in a few minutes. It's mostly the young men who are stars, who are making a ton of dough. The vast majority of other people, even in Division I, are often...
And the NIL deals.
And the NIL, right, the names, images, and likenesses are
I would say some of the people, though, who are making a lot of money are your very attractive females.
I think that's true.
Right.
That's
so
true.
you're like a lot of gymnasts are making a lot of money off of it. Cheerleaders are making money off of it.
But the point is, at a place,
cheerleaders, really?
Well, why do you think that is? At a place like Dartmouth,
hey, take advantage of it. You're still doing a service. It's still an athletic.
But the reality is the vast majority of Division I athletes benefit their school and don't get much benefit except the joy of performing, assuming that's it. I think this is a good decision. And the incredible thing, I was looking to see what Charlie Baker said, and I can't find a Baker quote.
I have yet to see a quote from him.
But there is an NCAA quote, and in light of the fact that he is president of the NCAA, the statement from the organization, I assume, is on his behalf. The association believes change in college sports is long overdue and is pursuing significant reforms. He's testified in front of Congress about the NIL stuff a lot. However, there's some issues the NCAA cannot address alone, and the association looks forward to working with Congress to make needed changes in the best interest of all student athletes. How many people think that Congress is going to act in the best interest of all student athletes and resolve this issue? If these kids want to organize into a union and the National Labor Relations Board says they're employees, let them go do what the hell they want to do.
Well, what I also found, now that you bring up Congress, that was an interesting part. I think it was in I don't know if I sent you a Wall Street Journal or it was a Globe article about it, but they did say that these kids want to get their case in front of a judge before the election, because the fear is that if Trump is elected, he will just put the kibosh on it start to finish. It won't even be an argument anymore. But more importantly, that some of these judgeships are up, and if they are replaced with Republican-leaning judges, that they will not rule in their favor, whereas Democratic judges who tend to be more pro-union will rule in their favor. So there's an urgency. I mean, these are not dummy kids. They understand the climate, and they're trying to get this in front of the Supreme, whether it's the state Supreme Court or the.
Well, they're happy. The people who aren't happy are the ones who are going to be appealing this thing all the way up. In any case, so because I felt left out, particularly in this threesome, I watched my first episode of Dynasty.
And what'd you think?
I watched the 35-minute Aaron Hernandez thing.
That was the only one you've watched?
It's all I've watched so far. It was as good.
It's out of order, Jim.
I know
it is out of order.
I know it is.
You're ruining the flow.
It was spectacular. I mean, just really, everybody knows, well, I don't know if everybody does know the story. Former tight end. Why don't you give a 30-second history of Aaron Hernandez?
Okay, so Aaron Hernandez was drafted, I believe, in the 4th round by the Patriots in 2010 when they decided to go. They also drafted Rob Gronkowski that year, so they wanted to go to a 2 tight end system. Aaron Hernandez, wildly talented player out of the University of Florida who had gotten into some trouble while in Florida, and they had fixers there who covered it up. The Patriots thought, it's okay, we've had troubled players before, we get him into the Patriot way, the Patriot system, he'll straighten out beyond the straight and narrow. Unfortunately, he was a more disturbed person than they realized, or that they were willing to acknowledge once he was with the Patriots.
Because he was so skillful.
He was from Bristol, Connecticut, which is nearby. He fell back in with some old friends and ended up being charged in one homicide, an execution-style murder of Odin Lloyd.
Convicted.
Was convicted in 2013. He was also accused but not convicted because they did not have enough evidence of killing 2 others in a drive-by shooting. He was accused but not convicted of that.
Didn't he get into a little scrape with them about a spilled beer
or something at a club?
And so he shot them.
But this
Allegedly.
episode is now out for public consumption. So we're through episode 6 that has been released to the Dynasty, and it is by far the most, it's just chilling. Everything else is football and, drama and spilling the tea of what happened behind the scenes. But this episode was chilling to watch. And it was also disturbing, Jim, and I'm sure you felt the same way, to know that so many guys noticed a pattern and a problem, and that Bill Belichick often, and I would say the Crafts as well, turned a blind eye to it to the best of, to a certain extent, because he was such a good football player.
Well, again, let me just say, one of the criticisms of the Dynasty, which, as I say, I wasn't watching, unlike everybody else until over the weekend, is that what does it say at the end? Kraft Productions?
So it's not Kraft Productions.
Well,
it is not a Kraft Production. It's Image Productions. It is. We're actually having the director at work today.
Jeff Benedict.
Yes. And there's one other. Maybe it's the producer.
Can I tell you, I just want to say, for those who are saying, I was among them, obviously wrongly, this is a Kraft show. Kraft is embarrassed a lot in interviews in this when he talks about every time Aaron Hernandez would walk by me, he would kiss me on the cheek. I was a father figure to him. And to Kraft's credit, this is Robert Kraft, not the kid, not Jonathan. To his credit, the last image of this episode is Kraft, who was very sympathetic to Hernandez, says he went to him after he was arrested for Odin Lloyd's. He said, "Did you do it? And if you did it, I'm sure there was a good reason," which is unbelievable. Kraft essentially owned up to his whatever. Here he is at the end of this episode.
And he looked me right in the eye, not blinking anything, and said, "Mr. Kraft, I didn't do that. I was in Rhode Island," or something. And when he said it, I believed him. He actually changed my life and how I look at people, because to this day, I can't believe I got snookered like that.
By the way, we cut that off. He also goes on to say, "I apologize to the people."
Well, he does. That's at the very end of the episode. He looks directly in the camera. He apologizes to everyone. And listen, part of the reason everyone keeps calling this a Kraft production, it is not a Kraft production. It may appear that way because Kraft certainly comes off in his son Jonathan more favorable than Bill Belichick. These interviews were done last July, before Bill Belichick before the season even started, before they went 4-13, before they decided to part ways with him. This was done. And I think this is one of the episodes where Bill does himself no favors. You even have Ernie Adams in this episode. Ernie Adams was sort of the man behind the curtain, right? He's been Bill's best friend and right-hand guy since they were like in high school or something. Ernie's often credited with a lot of the schemes and things that they came up with, always in the draft room. And Ernie says, you know what, he's in this episode quite a lot, saying we took a chance on this guy. We thought we could change him. We were wrong. This was a bad decision. But none of us could have seen that he was a murderer. The only thing Bill Belichick says in this entire episode is, "That's in the past. I've talked about it. I'm not going to discuss it anymore." And Tom Brady, and I didn't like this either, Tom Brady wasn't in the episode at all either. And he was a teammate. He threw to this guy.
Well, he was in the episode on an on-field interview at the time, not a contemporary interview.
But not a contemporary, not a look-back interview.
I'm totally with
not
you.
where he had to answer.
I agree with you.
There's a story that either Brandon Lloyd, who was a wide receiver at the time, or Deion Branch, who was also a wide receiver at the time, they tell in the episode that there was a point where Brady had enough. Like, this was a guy who was came to practice in flip-flops and was running his mouth to everybody, and Brady told him to shut the bleep up. And then he kind of came after Brady and never, I don't know if they didn't ask him about it. I don't know if they did and he wouldn't talk about it. They were tired of putting things in of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick saying, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it. But this is the one episode to me that really made Bill Belichick look bad.
Two quick things. There's been a lot of speculation about his brain, Hernandez brain, CTE.
Yeah.
That he was.
Yeah, but he was doing some bad stuff before he at least was a pro player.
But he was what, 20? How old was he? 26, something like
26,
that.
27.
Yeah. I'm not letting him off the hook. Needless to say, I'm just saying that he was an explosive player who had a lot of brain damage from the hits he took.
Well, I also think it's more complicated than just brain damage from hits he took. I mean, this was a kid who was very troubled in high school, very troubled while he was at Florida. There's a story early in the episode where Bob Hohler from the Boston Globe, who does a spotlight investigation into his past, discovers that, again, I mentioned this in passing, that while at Florida, he would get into fights at bars, that he beat somebody basically to within an inch of his life, almost died, because he hit him so hard and had such anger, but it went away. And Aaron Hernandez just in his life thought, well, I'm really good at football. Everybody's going to make everything go away. I mean, this is someone who had a troubled childhood, who grew up in a bad Bristol, Connecticut. I know everybody sort of now associates it with ESPN. It's where ESPN headquarters are. But from what I understand, it's not a great part of Connecticut. There's a lot of gangs that he was involved in. There was a lot of drug use. This was someone who, it's more than just hits to the head in football. This, to me, is someone who had a very troubled past, and coach after coach after coach allowed him to get away with very, very bad behavior, murderous behavior, and turned a blind eye because he was supremely talented. That, to me, is the issue. It's nothing else than that. But he literally got away with murder for as long as he did because of his talent on the field. And you may mention two of the outbursts, the raging outbursts on the sidelines. And then there's very disturbing stories within the episode about things he would say in the locker room and the way that he would address teammates. Like Wes Welker, who was a good friend of Tom Brady, and poor guy was here for a long time, never won a Super Bowl. He is beside himself in the episode, not understanding. At one point he goes, I never understood why Bill Belichick, apparently Bill Belichick treated him differently than everybody else. He would do something that someone else would have to go run laps or leave practice for, and he'd laugh and say, oh, that's Aaron. And players were mad about it. Players were really upset with the way that the special treatment he got, and how, there's a point in the episode where they say it was known in the locker room that they call him Chico. That was his nickname. You don't go out with Chico. If you value your life, you never go out with Chico after hours. I wanted to get, we have time, because there was another great episode that I loved, the one before that. Oh, the one before, the Matt Castle one. Yeah, so it goes from this really lighthearted episode in episode 5 to a very dark episode in episode 6. That's right. Well, episode 5, people may recall, Tom Brady, the first game back after the Super Bowl, the first game in 2008 season, he gets a torn ACL and is replaced by this guy, Matt Castle. And I just got a kick out of this. Matt Castle didn't do a bad job. He I think they were 11 and 5 that year, and just missed the playoffs. But this just shows Bill Belichick talking in a way that I didn't hear him talking much. Do you have the clip? We have the clip of Castle describing. Oh, it's so great. It's so great. Talking about the time Belichick called him out right in the middle of watching a video. Here it is.
One time, I don't see a corner blitz, and I get absolutely annihilated in my back. Boom! Belichick comes in and he says, Castle, can we figure out a corner blitz? Because I don't want to have to write your mother a letter that says, Dear Mrs. Castle, we're sorry to inform you that your son is dead because he's a dumbass and didn't see the corner blitz.
Matt, I should say this.
That's pretty funny for Belichick.
Matt does work with us, so I have a special place in my heart. Yeah, he's on our pre- and post-game show for football, and then he also does some college football stuff now for Big NBC. I just think he is such a great guy, and he's such an unassuming sort of hero. I can't believe, by the way, that they spent an entire episode on this, but he's someone who hadn't started a football game since high school. He never started at USC. And there was a point, they kept hammering this when he was the starter, but he hadn't started on a national stage since the 7th grade when he was a starting pitcher for his Little League World Series team. this is someone who just, he was always kind of behind someone, and it was okay with that, right? Like, he made a
But didn't
really...
he come out in his first snap, he gets it completes the pass?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, he was doing pretty well.
He did,
Wasn't
listen,
Tom Brady
11-5
is not bad.
as the backup quarterback on a team that, was in transition at that point, and lost their 3-time Super Bowl winning quarterback is unbelievable. Matt is the nicest. He's so funny. He's a great guy. And I love that people got to like see that personality in this. And you also get to see how Brady became so maniacal about his training. So this is when Alex Guerrero enters the picture, right?
Yes.
He's got this knee injury. He's aging. He's afraid that he's never going to be able to play again. And then he talks about how Alex Guerrero became, a training partner to him. And
it talks about how Brady was trying to come back mid-season with the torn ACL.
Look at you talking about Brady. It's just, it is.
Well,
really,
she loves him.
You know what it is? I was rooting for the Patriots, needless to say, because
you're from here, I believe.
I grew up around here. We saw a lot of tragedy and loss.
Fall River,
But in any case, I love the fact that this is so well done by the people that made A Beautiful Mind, the people that made Apollo 13.
Yes,
it's really well done, and you can sign up for Apple TV, and then you can cancel after a month if you want to.
Yes. Wow.
You can. I can't.
You know how to
figure
cancel?
Out. I don't. But other people that are more clever than
Margie will pay for this for the rest of her life.
I'll be paying for this forever. So I want to talk about one of the great things that was such a neat thing. Caitlin Clark, as we know, she's a big star, and she's breaking all these scoring records. Here we have a clip from ESPN when she's setting the NCAA women's scoring record, 3,528 points, with a 3-point shot against Michigan.
Here comes Clark. How will she go for history? There it is! The all-time leading scorer in women's college basketball.
And then a couple of weeks later, she
So I
breaks
did to
the
say that
all-time.
wasn't an ESPN clip. That was
Who
an
was it?
NBC clip.
Oh, I'm
That's what she
sorry.
meant to
Okay,
say.
it was Peacock, and it was Zora Stevenson on the call.
Whatever.
Her young, up-and-coming female play-by-play.
And then a couple of weeks later, she breaks the record of Pete Maravich, so she has
Pistol
the record.
Pete, yep.
He was obviously the male. He did it in 3 seasons, but nevertheless, the all-time leading scorer, men and women, and she's now the champion. And she says she's going to go in the WNBA.
Yep.
There's huge fascination with this woman. The viewership, from what I understand, is like off the charts,
so
right?
the viewership on Sunday, I think the average total people who watched the game. So her game was up against the Celtics Warriors on Sunday afternoon. She at the peak time of her game when she was going for the record, 4 million people were tuned in to watch that game to 3 million on ABC.
True?
So she outrated the Celtics by 1 million people. Now, granted, the Celtics blew out. Like, it wasn't even a close game. So I'm sure people 52 points have flipped over. But she has set so many records. Like, that was the most watched women's basketball game since 1999. It's the second most watched college basketball game of all year long. The only other one that outrated it was Michigan, Arizona on Thanksgiving, which was on Fox. She is such a cash cow for these networks that Fox went to her and said, if you don't declare for the WNBA draft, we'll give you an NIL deal. Like, we'll pay you via name, image, and likeness just to stay in because it's so incredible for our ratings.
So what does she do for women's professional basketball?
Hopefully a lot of really good players have been coming into the league. And like the WNBA continues to gain, I think women's sports in general is starting to finally gain. It's taken a while, but gain some footing and some traction. I mean, hopefully people want to see what she can do in the league and people tune in to watch her. And then you're like, oh, this is a good product. I'm going to keep watching the WNBA. And it just builds that up. I love that because I think honestly for her, even monetarily, she might make more money in college than she will in the pros. The WNBA doesn't pay very much.
Yeah. And they were saying at this game, one of the tickets was $433, which is a lot for a women's basketball game.
That's a lot for a women's basketball game.
Yeah.
So she's been fantastic.
What kind of money do they make? I mean, a big star like her, shouldn't she get a big contract?
She'll probably get a decent. She'll probably go first overall in the WNBA draft would be my guess. I don't know enough about women's college hoops and the specific
but they
players.
Only make
I don't know about men's college
$200,000
hoops to be
she'll only make a couple $100,000. She won't get $1 million.
Isn't this why Griner was in Russia
That's why
playing?
a lot of these
the salaries are so crappy.
Now she has a ton of endorsement deals, which will allow her, hopefully, to not have to go play overseas because she'll just continue that endorsement money. But it's interesting to see if the Caitlin Clark effect has any trickle down, like a domino effect on the WNBA.
Yeah,
but I think the average salary is like it's like 6 figures in the WNBA versus like 8 figures.
Well, you also see how the fact that, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when girls weren't really playing soccer. And now they're all playing soccer, and the soccer, because you see the lineup outside the bars when the World Cup is here and the enthusiasm for soccer. And I think it's not impossible.
Well, and listen, Hillary Knight made a great point when because she's on the PWHL team here in Boston. She was like, I know we all want to be where the men are, but it took us 100 years to get here. Like, it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
It took the men some time, too. They just got a 100-year head start on us. So I know it's hard to be patient when you've already waited so long, but I really do think the wheels are in motion, that more and more people are realizing women's sports are awesome.
And there are a lot of pro leagues that have representatives right here in Boston, and we're going to the Renegades opening game. Remember, we made that commitment?
When is it?
Sometime in April, Jamie. Thank you.
They're visiting the governor today.
They are?
They are to
Fabulous.
be honored for their most recent
That's
title.
great.
Yep.
Trenny, great to see you. Trenny Casey, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for lifting our mood. We've been speaking with Trenny Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports
Whatever
Boston,
she is.
and a Boston Public Radio contributor. Thank you very much, Trenny. Up next, Frontline's executive producer, Rainey Aronson Roth, will zoom into the library to talk about Frontline's Oscar nomination for the great documentary film 20 Days in Mariupol. It is about the Russian near annihilation of a Ukrainian city and its attempt to kill the people there. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy. Of course, we're live at the library because we're there every Wednesday, here every Wednesday starting today. 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. We'll be back on Friday. Next Tuesday, the mayor joins us for an hour from 1 to 2, Michelle Wu. And today, to celebrate our first day back, we have a couple of cakes from the best bakery in town, in my opinion, Flour. So if you're here at 2, we hope you'll join us. We're joined now by Rainey Aronson Roth, executive producer, editor-in-chief at the brilliant Frontline. I think you know that they are up for an Academy Award for Best Documentary for the incredible film 20 Days in Mariupol. One of the most powerful and heartbreaking things I have ever seen about a country and a people that far too much of America seems to have forgotten. Rainey, congratulations, and it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. So pleased to be here.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for joining us, Rainey. So tell people that have not yet seen 20 Days in Mariupol, tell us what this film focuses in on.
Sure. I mean, first of all, thanks for highlighting the film. It's just always a pleasure to talk with you both.
Thanks.
And the film 20 Days in Mariupol really is a story told and documented by 3 journalists who were in Mariupol during the siege by Russia at the beginning of the Ukraine war. And essentially what you have are 3 independent journalists who work for the Associated Press who are there documenting. And by the time that they left, they were the only international journalists who were actually in Mariupol. So what they captured is really the only document, is the only proof of what happened there. And it's really looking at journalism in action. And what they saw there is heartbreaking. It's important that it was filmed. And that's what the film was really made of, are scenes that they were able to capture while they were under siege themselves as journalists. being there for 20 days.
Before we detail some of these scenes, tell us how these journalists, we had an opportunity, I think Andrew Cabral was in me. You were not
I was
there.
listening that day.
Yeah,
That was
Andrew
a
Cabral
great
and I
interview.
got a chance to talk with Mstislav Chernov, with one of those journalists. They were with the AP. How did the Frontline AP connection happen?
Well, first of all, Mstislav Chernov is the director of the film, and the collaboration really centers around him and his directorial vision. So we have a partnership with the Associated Press, and we were working on a film with them already about alleged war crimes in Ukraine, and we had formed a team, but there was also this team that was in Mariupol that we had heard of. We were seeing the images come out, especially the maternity ward scene that is in the film, right? The maternity ward film that was basically seen in the news was something that was at the very heart and soul of the film, right? Is that they were able to film inside this maternity ward as it was being bombed, and it's really profound. And so we had seen these scenes, but what we didn't know is that the filmmakers had actually captured so much more. And so when Mstislav Chernov was able to get out of Mariupol, I met with him, it's probably one day later after he got out of Mariupol, and he told me, and the AP shared with me that they really wanted to make a documentary film. And that was one of the most exciting things, was to hear that these folks had been really thinking deeply about how they could tell the whole story. And that's how the partnership began.
Well, let's play a little bit of the sound, because we have sound from the scene that you mentioned in the film where the maternity hospital was bombed. Here it is.
We go to the top of the building and see the smoke just a few blocks away. It's a hospital.
Хирургический корпус, вот там, двухэтажное здание, где родильное раньше было. Быстрее! Вон там, аж туда едьте, быстрее, там гинеколог ждет.
I think many people may remember one of the scenes that stuck in my mind anyway, is the shot of the very, very pregnant woman. Obviously had been injured. She's being carried out on a stretcher. You can see her. She looks like she's days from delivering her baby. She ends up dying, and the baby inside her ended up dying as well. What does it mean for this film to be nominated and for the Academy Awards that people are all paying attention to? What do you think it's going to mean?
I really hope the first and foremost thing is that people can see what happened in Mariupol and understand the gravity of what happened there, and then to understand that that's happened across the country of Ukraine. This is one story of many. My other hope, and this really comes from my desire to have more journalists on the ground, is that people understand the importance of eyewitness journalism. People there actually witnessing it and capturing these moments means that we have a document. And as you know in the film, some of those scenes, in fact, were then misinterpreted into disinformation by the propaganda machine that was coming out of Russia. And so the fact that they had to go back and verify some of those scenes to say, from the Associated Press, these are real, this really happened, is only because they were there to film. And I feel like that's my biggest hope, is that journalism, people appreciate the importance of journalists, independent journalists, being on the ground to document what's happening across the globe right now.
Well, my biggest hope is that you win the Academy Award on Sunday night. People choose to watch the film who hadn't seen it. And for those who have supported the abandonment of the Ukrainian people's fight for democracy, they're so ashamed that they call their elected representatives and say, we need to support these people. It's not just, and that's one. And I hope that is the case, because we have very short memories in this country, like that of a gnat for the most part. And I hope that for those who haven't seen 20 Days in Mariupol, they do. And the second thing is, I hadn't thought about this till I watched the film for the second time last night, Rainey, but the documentation in this film, I am guessing, will be of value if some of the murderers here are ever prosecuted for the war crimes for which they should be prosecuted, no?
I mean, you never know, Jim, to be honest with you. Our work is in the public interest, and so our work could be used by prosecutors if they choose to. This work that we've actually published, I think that as important as that is that this is in the public record. It's now on the public record. Millions of people are now seeing the film. And so what law enforcement does, as with all Frontline's journalism, that's really their call. But it's really important that we were able to document this for the future and also for the present accountability to the governments that are involved in this.
When you spoke to the journalists about their decision to stay and be the last people in a city that was getting destroyed and a city whose people were being murdered in huge numbers, what was the thought process? What drove them to stay, risking their own lives to get this story out? What was it all about?
You know, Jim, I work with war photographers and people who document war a lot and very often at Frontline. And I think what motivated Mstislav and his two colleagues on the ground was what motivates a lot of journalists in peril, which is that if they left, no one would be able to see what they were seeing. It was as simple as that. They needed to document what was there. It's their life's calling, and they did it at great peril. And frankly, you see journalists doing this across the globe right now. You see journalists in Gaza risking their lives. You see journalists, as you've seen in 1,000 Cuts, and you highlighted that film too, Maria Reza and the people in the Philippines saying we need to actually report on this. So I think to some degree, this is the calling of a journalist. And you know, the two other journalists said the same thing to me, that they felt very strongly that they had to stay. In fact, as they left, and that is one of the most profound scenes of all time, right? When they left Mariupol, when they were able to gain access to leave, they were worried about the stories that they weren't able to document because they were leaving. They were really centered on how do we make sure that people know what happened in the city of Mariupol.
Well, so many scenes just stick with you, and they're so upsetting. The policeman who was begging for help, the man who was loading bodies into a mass grave, the little 18-month-old baby that is struggling for life and then dies, and the mother's looking at the doctor saying, you couldn't save him. And I mean, you just, these scenes just stay in your head. In fact, one of the things that Mstislav Chernov says is that despite all this, when the film was viewed in Kyiv, there was a standing ovation that was so long and so powerful that dogs started barking because they heard the cheers. In fact, here's a little bit of his discussion of how audiences reacted to the film. And surprisingly, despite all this horror, they were very hopeful. Here he is.
Yes, it is hard. It is heartbreaking, but there is hope there, and there is a resilience, a resistance of Ukrainian people who survive nevertheless, regardless of the indiscriminate violence that is happening to them.
You meant to say that was on Boston Public Radio with you and Andrew Cabral.
It was on Boston Public Radio with me and Andrew Cabral. That is correct. And you also think, too, when you first see this, you can't imagine this happening for so long and then happening somewhere else. And as you just said, Rainey, now we're watching Gaza, just not that much longer after this.
Right. I mean, I think one of the things about this film in particular, and I've been thinking a lot about sort of why a documentary, right, is that a film like the Mariupol film has scenes, as you mentioned, Marjorie, of people that you relate to, whether you're Ukrainian, American, you could be from anywhere around the world. And when you see the father crying over his 16-year-old boy's body, you really hard not to relate to that as a human. And so I think something that we try to do in all of our work, right, is to actually humanize these experiences. You saw us do that in For Sama. You've seen us do it in other big documentaries where we say, this is actually a universal experience. This should be. Humanity should be, right? And so we should be able to have a shared experience where we're seeing somebody cry like that, and to understand that this is a civilian's son who is killed, and it matters that he died, and to document that along the way is one of the more important things that we can do at Frontline.
First time it was also nominated for an Academy Award for Best Documentary, was it not? It's just...
It was, yes.
You know,
this is our third nomination, Jim.
And third is the charm, someone said? I believe that. Maybe I said that. You know, Rainey, we're talking to Rainey Aronson Roth, who essentially is the head of the brilliant Frontline part of GBH here. You know, we almost every day we get texts and calls from people, Rainey, who say, I can't watch the news anymore, it's too painful. I can't pay attention to this because it's so horrible. I can't watch what's happening to the Palestinians in Gaza. Do people watch things like 20 Days in Mariupol, or
wonderful question.
Is the pain too much? They do?
Yeah, they watch this film in the hundreds of thousands. We're seeing incredible numbers on our streaming platforms. And I think what people are drawn to is, frankly, Mstislav Chernov, who tells you a story about what happened. And so I think all of the work around this film, the amplification of the message, means that, yes, literally, people are watching this film. And some people write to me and say, you know, I had to take a break in the middle of it. I hope that's okay. And I say, absolutely. This is a film that's meant to be seen and streamed on your own time, on your own docket when you can take it in. But it is really important to keep our eyes open to what's actually happening in the world. I really believe it. It's not easy. And Mstislav says that in the film himself. This is not easy to watch, but this is important for us all to,
by the way,
to hope make space.
Is it available to stream? It is right now, right? PBS.org?
Yes, it's available to stream. It's a pbs.org/Frontline. It's also on YouTube, on Frontline's YouTube channel. And you can find that through the GBH website as well. So, of course, GBH is the biggest supporter of this film.
You know, I just want to play one more clip for Mstislav Chernov. He was on Boston Public Radio talking about this, and he was talking about, with the horror and the tragedy, then the joy of a baby being born by a C-section to a mother who is injured. Here, that is.
And then baby cried, and everyone started to cry.
Yeah.
And then one of the doctors told me, and this is not in the film, but before the bombing nearby started, they told me, we used to see people only dying in this hospital. So having a child born is like a ray of light coming down from heaven to us.
It is a ray of light. You know, so can we talk about, I assume everybody listening knows how Marjorie and I feel about Frontline, and I think we know how America feels about Frontline. Can you share with people a couple of the other things that have either recently come out or in the works? What's the status quo? What's happening right now, Rainey?
Thank you, Jim, and thanks for your support. The feelings are mutual. So we had a really big film called Democracy on Trial this month. Thank you for featuring that. It's a really big opus piece, 2.5-hour piece by director Michael Kirk. And coming down the pipeline, we have some really exciting films. We have a film that's updating the Boeing endeavors, and I think our audience will really care about that film, as well as a big film out of Venezuela that's looking at reporting in Venezuela being under attack. And as you know, we tend to do films that look at journalists around the world. We did 1,000 Cuts, as I mentioned, but that one is going to be really an important film. And then we're looking at policing techniques when it comes to deaths in custody, but not involving guns. And so that's been an interesting project with the Associated Press. And we have a lot of other things in the hopper. We have the fall coming up with The Choice. This year we're doing The Choice, the presidential candidates. We're also looking at the VP candidates because it seems kind of important to look at both. So that's a new offering from Frontline, is our Vice President's Hour. So we'll be doing investigative biographies of both the vice presidents.
I don't know if you can admit this, but I shouldn't put it that way. Say this, but is the vice presidential thing because there's a 77 and an 81-year-old running for president? Is that the thinking? Tell the truth, Rainey.
You can't answer that question, Jim. I'll say this, and I will then have to deliver on this. I think it's a genre the vice presidents are really worth looking at. We had thought about actually doing vice presidents in the past, especially looking at the vice presidents from the prior administration and this administration. So, you know, I think that this has been seemingly important to us for a number of years now, and this is the timing is right.
Can I just say one thing? We've talked about, you don't get to hear this unless you happen to be tuned in that day. We talk about The Choice, which comes out every 4 years. Michael Kirk and his colleagues historically, it's 2 hours on each of the candidates. And before you watch it, you say to yourself, there is nothing I don't know about Donald Trump. There is nothing I don't know about Joe Biden. And all you have to do is watch about 3.5 minutes. And you learn so much about people and issues that you think you know everything about. So I cannot wait for that to come out in the full.
Thank you. The bar is high. It always is. You know, we've done The Choice about both of these men before. So we're really, just this morning, Mike and I and the team we were on the phone saying, you know, we have to make sure we deliver something that's fresh and new, and we will. And big new interviews are coming through, which I think is really going to be the answer.
Well,
by the way,
that's
is
the
where
other
we
thing.
learn.
That's the other thing. The people that you get to interview, the Rolodex over there at
it's
Frontline is unbelievable. I mean, all these really big deal people get to talk.
Well, wait a second. Did you know that when Donald Trump's father told him he had to get a job delivering papers, Donald Trump did it, and we learned from The Choice that he did it in a limousine.
That's right.
And the limousine would stop, and he'd throw the paper out, and then he'd drive to another house.
Now, we're talking about, a very, very incredible film nominated for Academy Award, but I would not be true to my low-rent, tacky self
glad.
if I didn't ask you
You're not going to ask her what she's wearing.
No, not ask her what she's wearing, unless you want to tell me. But, this is the third nomination, right? You go out to the Academy Awards. This is a big night. What's that like? I mean, it must be, even though this is serious, it must be kind of a blast. You get to see all the stars. Do you get to go on any parties? Do they put you in the back if you're the documentary filmmakers? Or so it takes you a long time to get to the stage?
I'm going to tell you about an email that we just got. This is really interesting. So the Oscars are doing things a little bit differently this year. If you're a nominee, right, and you're sitting in the area that's filmed, right before, like a little bit before you would actually win or lose, you get moved. So people come and they move you sort of to the front so that it's a shorter walk to the stage if you win. So all the nominees go towards the front. Okay. If you win, you go on stage. If you don't win, you're walked back to your original seat. So I was like, okay, that is, interesting, and it's going to keep the show going. So as a producer, I appreciate that, right? I'm a producer, so this is going to be great, and we're really excited to be there. It's an honor.
It is
huge.
If
you think about the five films nominated are all international. That's a huge thing to say that every single director is, really from the global landscape right now, and I'm proud to be in the mix for a third time. It's really something.
Am I not right that Navalny, which we've talked about ad nauseum here, won either last year or the year before? Did it not for Best Documentary?
It won last year, and that was a really big deal.
Can I ask you? Oh, you have one more thing?
Well, I do. So the documentary film,
here we go.
Do you get to kind of kibbutz with each other, network with each other?
Kibitz.
Whatever it is.
Yeah,
Kibbutz.
you do. You get to know the other filmmakers.
Yeah.
You definitely do. And in some of these events, I've been able to meet some of the stars even. You'd be surprised. They're
Like who, Rainey?
Excited. Oh, come on.
Just give us a couple. Leonardo DiCaprio?
Okay, I'm going to change the topic because Marjorie is...
Actually, I do want to do a shout out.
To whom?
I'm going to just say one thing.
What?
So you did ask about the dress. I use a local designer dressmaker. Oh. And I believe, so I got a hack. I have a little bit of a hack as a person who's worked for public media all this time, that I could figure out how to sketch dresses and make dresses for a more affordable cost. So that's how I've done it my whole adult life. So I worked with this woman, Rachel Walters. She has a shop and she's awesome. And basically, we designed the dress and I'm gonna wear it to the Oscars.
Rachel Walters. Okay,
Where is she, Rainey?
In Belmont. She's a Lexington resident, but she's in Belmont. And so that's actually been a really interesting process, right?
Great.
For local people as you're going through this and be supported by our local community.
I've written it down because Jim and I are hoping to get some awards somewhere. Maybe
I don't think so.
Honorable mention before it's all over. You know what I mean?
Miss Walters will be out of business long before that award. Rainey, on a serious note before you go, I'm sorry to break the mood that Marjorie created. Could you spend the last 90 seconds and tell us about this local journalism initiative thing
that
absolutely.
Frontline is doing. It's terrific. What is it?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, actually starting a number of years ago, I decided, because I was on this big sort of think tank panel thinking about where the trust broke down. And you both know that a lot of the trust that's built up is at the local level, right? It's your conversations with local people. It's the local journalism that fuels trust in national journalism. So I made a decision that I wanted to fundraise to be able to support local newsrooms across the country. And we have 5 newsrooms currently. The person who runs the program for Frontline is brilliant. Her name is Erin Texera. She's an editor, and we had an application pool, and we now just announced yesterday, our partners, and it's very exciting. We're going to be all across the country reporting on really important things.
Now, by the way, we'd like to say our staff, doing what they do so well, identified your dress. Are we able to put the dress up on the? Can we? We don't know if we can.
No, not my dress. But you can.
We can. We're going to do it. This is Rainey doesn't want us to do, so don't blame. Oh, we can't.
They can't.
Luckily for Rainey.
Great dress.
The dress is beautiful.
Great dress.
Congratulations to you and all your colleagues for a brilliant and unbelievably important film. And good luck on Sunday. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Rainey, congratulations for all your great work over there. Frontline is just unbelievable.
And by the way,
so much.
particularly, Rainey doesn't. She's not an editorialist. We can be. For those people who, in our elected leaders, who've decided to abandon the Ukrainian people, watch this film if you haven't seen it. pbs.org/frontline. It is, as I said, as powerful and heartbreaking as 94 minutes can be. Yep. And I don't think any of these heartless souls can watch it and continue in their heartless ways.
Thank you, Rainey.
Thank you, Rainey.
Thank you both.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Rainey Aronson-Ross. She's executive producer and editor-in-chief at Frontline. We've been speaking to her about the Academy Award-nominated documentary on Ukraine, 20 Days in Mariupol. As Jim said, it's incredible. Up next, Boston Public Radio's music panel returns back by popular demand with 3 familiar faces. CBR's Brian McCreath, GBH's
CRB too.
CRB, whoops, what did I say?
It's close enough.
Okay, CRB, Brian McCreath, GBH's James Bennett II, and Berkeley's Emmett G. Price III. You know him from the Revs. You're listening to Boston Public Radio. You're going to hear some incredible music coming up. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Mark Regan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. Our first Wednesday, we'll be here every Wednesday hereafter, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday at the library to celebrate our first Wednesday. We have a couple of wonderful flour cakes. One of my favorite, my favorite bakery in Greater Boston. And if you're here at 2 o'clock, you should join us and partake. Next Tuesday, when we're at the library, the mayor's with us from 1 to 2. Is it fair to say that this segment is maybe your favorite segment on the show?
Yes,
okay,
it's great.
And it's uplifting. It's time for our BPR music panel. It's a longtime institution of the show. we assemble the brightest minds, at least most of them, in music to help guide us to new music that's worth our attention and upcoming local concerts worth your time. Here with us at the BPL is Brian McCreath. He's production director for WCRB and the BSO and a whole host of things. Brian, it's great to see you.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Good to be here.
James Bennett II is arts and culture reporter for GBH, co-host of The Culture Show. And if you say, where has he been? He's just getting back from a fellowship with This American Life. We missed you. Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Emmett G. Price III, who I thought only existed on Zoom, actually, but apparently there is a real Emmett G. Price III, Dean of Africana Studies at Berkeley and the quieter half of All Revved Up. We have to say, before we start, from our show's inception here at GBH, one of the central voices in these segments belonged to the great, great Brian O'Donovan, who, as you know, passed away last fall. What was Brian's great line that you said all the time?
It was something like local music.
Live music.
Live music,
is
that's
where
it's at. Thank you, Brian.
So it goes without saying, we all miss Brian.
Yeah.
We want to make sure you're aware that a week from today, that's Wednesday the 13th, we're going to hear music from players involved with the Brian O'Donovan Legacy Series over at the Burn. They've got a weekly music series and a special show coming up for St. Patrick's Day, so please watch for that. Brian, James, Emmett, welcome. We're really thrilled to have you here.
Thanks
so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm so glad we're doing this again because I really loved it. So let's start with you, Brian McCreath. What do you got?
Oh, wow. Well, look, the thing about Boston is that we have an internationally known orchestra. We get artists coming through town all the time that are internationally known. And thankfully, the Celebrity Series of Boston tends to bring at least 2 internationally known orchestras to Boston every year. So it's great to hear the BSO. I hear them every week. We broadcast them every week live, and I'm so privileged to do that. But I also love hearing also great orchestras from elsewhere. And coming up, the Orchestre de Paris, the Orchestra of Paris, is coming to Boston on March 17th at Symphony Hall. Klaus Mekele is the conductor. He's, let's see, my notes say 28 years old.
Wow.
He's 28 years old. He's one of the hottest conductors going on right now. But it must be said, not that this is a segment that deals in a lot of controversy, but reviews of his work are very mixed, like polarizing. He has just lit people on fire and others cannot deal with him. Really? So this is going to be a really fun opportunity, frankly.
Sort of like reviews of our show, actually.
Exactly.
That's
you
right.
can relate. I'm glad you can relate. So what the Orchestre de Paris is bringing to Boston is a program that includes the Firebird, the complete Firebird by Igor Stravinsky, the ballet score that he wrote in the early 1900s. Significantly, they're also doing a Rachmaninoff piano concerto with this pianist named Yun Chan Lim. He is, my notes say, 19 years old.
Wow.
I listened to him this morning on YouTube.
Wow, good. Yeah, so he actually just played with the Boston Symphony. He did Rachmaninoff's 3rd piano concerto, and it was stunning, absolutely stunning. He's doing Rachmaninoff's 2nd with the Orchestre de Paris, so that alone is a highlight. But I think what I wanted to play for you as a little teaser, some sound, is what Firebird sounds like. So let's just listen to a little bit of this first clip. We've got 2 little clips here from Firebird. Let's just listen to this first one, which gives you a sense of the interplay of instruments that go on in this just absolutely brilliant piece. Here's the first little part of Firebird. So just listen to the lines passing from strings to winds to brass. And it's this skittering little theme. These are princesses playing a game, by the way, in the story. But this is just virtuoso orchestral playing. You know, when you have brass players doing one thing, immediately pass to the woodwinds, immediately pass to this little solo violin that sort of like jumps out every couple of seconds. It's just brilliant music. And what we often hear in orchestra halls is the Firebird Suite. It's 4 of the best parts of the ballet, but this is the complete ballet. It takes about 45 minutes to play. And let's go now to the second clip, because this is where it gets to be pretty spectacular. This is the infernal dance of Kashke in the ballet, and let's just take a quick listen to this. So it's that same interplay, but now it happens at much greater volume and with a lot more intensity. The experience of that in a concert hall can be overwhelming. So this is just a great opportunity to, first of all, hear a fantastic orchestral masterpiece that's not done that often as a full ballet, to hear an internationally known orchestra with a conductor who we all have to make up our own mind about. This guy, like I said, he's really well known, but for some people notorious, for other people brilliant, and it's a great opportunity just to sort of hear this guy's work and feel like, what do I think about this?
March 17th at Symphony Hall. James
Thanks
Bennett.
to the Celebrity Series of Boston,
Celebrity
I do want to mention.
Series.
Yeah,
Boston.
What do you
exactly.
got?
Before I get into that, I wanted to tell you, Brian, I don't know if you saw, but I moved the cup of the headphones off because I was like, that Stravinsky strike is going to come. And it's so, I knew it was coming. You know, there was like some video that I saw at some concert hall and this woman had fallen asleep and you hear like this kind of heart attack being jolted awake. So I was like, I don't know how loud this is, but I just moved it off.
Just in case.
So this is not that. This is... So the French-Chilean rapper Anna Tijoux is coming to Boston on March 25th at Brighton Music Hall. She's touring a new album called Vida. If you don't know her, like the quick rundown is that she was born in 1977, which is the name of her second solo album, which kind of, I think, gave her a bit more international exposure. Her parents were jailed during the Pinochet dictatorship, and then they left Chile, went to France, and so that explains her kind of like cross-oceanic connection. So anyway, I was listening to the Spotify release radar. I heard this song come up called To Say. This is not the selection that I've pulled, but I was like, is that Anna Tijoux? Does she have a new song out right now? And she had a new album out, in fact. It's her first album in 10 years. And that title, Vida, it kind of ties up with her kind of political identity that has kind of informed a lot of her music. It's kind of distilled from a quote from a friend that was working in a refugee camp in the Middle East, not in Gaza, but elsewhere, who basically had told her that our best revenge against death is life. And so that bit, the Vida, kind of like lives in the that album title. But let's take a listen to the title track itself. I think we have that queued up. So. And this is a featured guest, the English artist Omar that you're hearing right now. I like kind of like getting lost in this little ethereal sound. And the thing is, the lyrics in this verse, they're so life-affirming. They're thanking and acknowledging life, the life that kind of runs through your bones, the life that gives you joy with your loved ones. But what I found really interesting about that bit are the words that she's using to describe her joy. It's really visceral. She's rapping about like hemoglobin and like muscles, which I don't really. She has this one bit, like in the part we just heard, but she raps globulo, ovulo, modulo, musculo, which is globules, eggs, modules, and muscles. And it's so like in the guts, but it sounds so elegant with that, piano vamping in the back. But yeah, I was excited about that. And yeah, she'll be coming to Boston on the 25th. So.
Brighton Music Hall.
Fantastic.
Emmett, in the flesh.
Well, from Stravinsky and Rachmaninoff to these phenomenal lyrics, I'm going to take us even more live to our phones. And I know I'm breaking the Brian O'Donovan rule, but this is live music. And there is a big, massive controversy within country music right now because of the release of Beyonce's Texas Hold'em.
Yes.
And before I talk about it, let's just play a little excerpt of this.
Yeah.
This is our dear friend Rhiannon Gittins on banjo and viola here.
Rhiannon.
You know what I almost said, Emmett? I'm really tired, and I forgot for a split second who it was.
Yeah.
And I was about to say, that woman can really sing.
I mean, but that's the controversy, Jim. I mean, she's from Houston, Texas. I mean, she's a Texas native. And within the tradition of American music, or Black American music, however we want to articulate this, where Charlie Pride and so many other Black musicians who participated in the country and Western, because we've gotten rid of that piece, genre, she is just another extension of that. And for some strange reason, and I'm using air quotes here, some strange reason, people were boycotting different radio stations that played this song, and people were actually calling into country Western radio stations to request that, this song was not played.
Wow.
And by doing that, it became the #1 song on the country
First
charts.
by a Black woman, am I right about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So just because she was a Black woman. I mean, it's
And
racist.
that's why I use air quotes, right? I mean, where are we in this nation where you judge a musical genre by the race or the ethnicity of the artist? I mean, wow.
A little known fact, I grew up in Texas.
I didn't know that.
It turns out that one of the artists that I love that takes me back to Texas is Lyle Lovett.
Huge.
And I just heard in that little clip you played, there's this little gravelly part that Beyonce does with her voice, just for a split second. That's like Lyle. This is great country music.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things about this piece is an homage to all of the Black artists who participated in country and Western over the years. So there was very definitive and very strategic to bring in these different characteristics and nuances of these artists over longevity.
Yeah, so one quick question about this. So what was the reaction? Did country music, did stations stop playing it, or did they say, hey, we're playing it, too bad?
The stations that tried to stop playing it, notice I say tried, they lost listeners.
Wow,
and so they ended up having to play the song to reclaim and to grow listeners. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, if you think about TikTok, and I don't think about TikTok too often, but I'm inviting some of us to, I'm a reverend. I mean, come on.
That's right.
We think about TikTok, and part of TikTok is these dance crazes. Well, this song has created so many dance crazes on TikTok that it is even forcing live radio and radio programmers to pay attention to, this controversy as a way.
By the way, there's some woman by the name of Irene who just texted and said, first time he's ever been right about anything. I don't know who she is.
Jim, I actually believe you.
That's round one of our music roundtable. And I think, we're talking to James Bennett second, Emmett G. Price third, and Brian McCreath. And Brian, it would be round two for you.
Round two is up. I will say, by the way, I didn't know Rhiannon plays on that record, too.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
She's brilliant.
Amazing.
Also a July 4th deal, no?
Oh, yeah?
Is that not? No, I'm talking about Gittins.
Rihanna Gittins, yeah, same person.
Boston Pops and But hasn't there been a July 4th thing? I thought.
It could be.
Well, if you don't know him, I retract it.
I might not be the authority on what the Pops does on the
Thank
Esplanade.
goodness the show isn't live.
Right.
Okay, so wait a second.
Yeah, when is this airing, by the way? Is this going to be on soon? Well, listen,
Brian,
one of my
round
favorite
two.
things is when you hear a piece of music that kind of has worked its way into every part of your life, and you almost can't escape it because of commercials, because of music, because of elevators, or whatever other sort of cliche scenario you want to construct. And then you actually get to grip that music in a live setting as it was really meant to be as a piece of music. So that's what Boston Baroque is going to offer on March 15th and March 16th. The 15th at Jordan Hall at New England Conservatory, the 16th at our own GBH Calderwood studio. Oh. And this is when Christina Day Martinson, the violinist and concertmaster of Boston Baroque, is going to play all four of the concertos by Vivaldi known as the Four Seasons.
Oh.
So let's just, to remind everyone what that sounds like with a little sound. This is exactly.
Yeah.
And the other, by the way, and not to bury the lead here or anything, but soprano Amanda Forsyth is singing on this concert as well.
Oh.
She is an internationally known soprano who sings a lot in Boston because she is based here. So it's not as though she's unfamiliar, but every time that I have seen Amanda Forsyth sing and heard her, I am reminded she is a star. She is the charisma, the artistry that she brings to the stage is unbelievable. So that's Boston Baroque doing the Four Seasons and a cantata by Handel with Amanda Forsyth coming up on the 15th and 16th.
You know what's great about Jordan Hall that you would never mention because it's too trivial? If you are lucky
I don't do trivia.
and strategic, you can get a single seat. I don't mean a single ticket, but a single seat. at Jordan Hole. Do you know that? There is one row.
Oh, yeah.
Has one seat.
Yep.
Right.
Well, that went over like a lead balloon. But at least you know what I'm talking about.
I do. No, it's such a quirky hall because it was built.
Thank you for helping me
When
out.
was it? Like in 1900, 1910, somewhere around there. And it's such a quirky little horseshoe-shaped hall with a curvature to it, so that you can't put just standard rows of seats in. The seats are arranged in rows, but at certain points, like you're mentioning here, Jim, there's like this extra space where they well, there's a space. Let's put a seat there.
One space.
It's like one seat sitting right there, all by itself. It is. And by the way, we talk about Symphony Hall a lot as one of the true concert hall gems of the entire world. You really kind of have to say the same thing about Jordan Hall, especially for what Boston Baroque does. That kind of intimate sound in Jordan Hall is magical.
So you've rescued me two times.
It's what I'm here for, Jim.
Third embarrassment. Go ahead.
Well, we've had Christina Day Martinson, violinist, on our show for Live Music Fridays. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
That wouldn't be surprising
We
because
have
she's
had
brilliant.
her here performing in the Boston Public Library.
Okay, James, take it away.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to also just kind of, co-sign the Vivaldi for you. I have this thought about that music where it's like, it's so embedded in like pop culture. We all kind of know it to the point where it seems kind of like warmed over and boring. And so when you do hear an interpretation of it that like feels fresh, it's kind of like eating a really well-prepared chicken breast. So it's not like too dried out. It's like, oh, you can make something good out of this thing that we all know, so.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I love that.
The movies, the soundtrack, whatever, they flatten that music out.
Yeah.
And this absolutely sparks. This like brings it all back to life. Like a map in relief. It's just brilliant.
For sure. Well, kind of similar to that feeling I had when I listened to Anna on the T. I also was surprised when I found out that there was a new Sleater-Kinney album that was out. It's called Little Rope. They're also touring, and they'll be at Paradise Rock Club on March 17th. And like, they've been, as a band, they've been active. Their drummer left, I think, in 2019, but this is their second album since her departure. And so Carrie and Corin are writing again, but also they're joined by Dave Depper on guitar.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Yes.
And I'm nervous because I've already made 3 mistakes. Carrie is from Portlandia, Carrie, is she not?
Yes. The answer is yes. But
Okay.
is she from Portlandia, or when she got to Portlandia was she from?
Okay, fine. But it is
I
the
don't know.
same
But yes,
woman,
same
right?
woman. Yes,
Right?
yeah. Carrie,
That's pretty incredible.
It is. I mean, she's great, but unfortunately, kind of like the kind of grip on the album is that as they were creating it, her mother and her stepmother. Her mother and stepfather were involved in a fatal car accident. And so the album isn't necessarily a response to that, but it was produced in the aftermath of that. So there is this air of grief that exists over it, and we can kind of hear that in this track called Don't Feel Right. It's about, going through a rough time. And you're listening to it, and it's, kind of, she's setting the list of things that you're going to do when you have kind of the mental and this emotional fortitude to do those things in life, right? Make the list. She's saying, ditch half of, the meds or whatever. And, no, I'm saying, and there's another kind of like run in another verse where, she says, or she sings rather, every night when the sun's down, drive around and drown the pain out. And when I was like doing a little bit of research ahead of this, she had said in an interview that she wanted a song, she wanted like a vibe that you could drive around to. She wanted to be a bit fast-paced, even though it is kind of about the sadness, because like what's, I guess in a way, like more American than just hopping in a car. I wouldn't know. I don't drive. This is all imagined to me.
You don't?
Well, you're a New York City kid, aren't you?
Yeah, I have a driver's license, but I can't tell you last time I actually operated a motor vehicle, which I can do competently. I swear it. But I might have to go rent a car this weekend and drive around listening to it to get the desired effect.
So where are they and where are they?
Where are they based? Where are they
performing?
At Paradise Rock Club on March 17th.
March 17th.
Yeah.
Now, Emmett, Patty from Duxbury texted in. Here's what she had to say. This is the longest I've ever heard Emmett speak without being interrupted. He has a very nice voice. I think that's that's a compliment kind of thing. You know?
I appreciate it as a compliment, and let Patty from Duxbury know that I'm kind of confused too, because I'm used to being told what I think, from my alter ego and my other voice.
You're going to pay for this, by the way. I hope you know.
Clearly.
You are clearly going to pay.
Clearly.
Monday we'll find out.
If I make it to Monday.
What do you got there?
So, after the height of COVID and with all the closures of everywhere, jazz clubs are trying to come back and really trying to reinvigorate, bringing national artists to Boston. Boston's a very strange and hard place to bring national artists to because we have so many here that are local who are based here. And not just our educators at our institutions of higher learning, but just artists who base themselves here in Boston. So Scullers is doing a great thing. They're bringing Nicholas Payton from New York.
Holy cow.
And Nicholas is a great human being, originally from New Orleans, phenomenal multi-instrumentalist, a trumpet player. He's bringing his Fender Rhodes out and playing some keys and doing a little voice now. But what is interesting about Nicholas is in the day of a lot of backlash of artists, creatives actually speaking out about political ideologies and their thoughts. Folks were like, just shut up and just play, or, shut up and dribble. And so he's come up with this hashtag BAM, Black American Music. And he's suggesting that jazz should be codified as Black American music because of what he calls cultural colonialism. That people from all over the place are taking ownership of it and re-narrating it. And so he's doing some really cool music, I think, that goes in tangent with this ideological and theoretical aspect. Let's listen to a little bit of what he has going on. So he'll be at Scullers on March 15th.
What do you think of Scullers as a room, as a venue?
I like the old room better.
You do?
I do. I like the old room better. But the new room is more intimate, I think, and I think they're doing a great job with the space allocation that they have. But the old room was where the history was.
Well, I agree, but we went to see Lisa Fisher last year. She's been with us every time she comes through town, and just brilliant. And there is an intimate feel that I think is really... It's great.
I mean, the old room for me reminds me of the great Fred Taylor, who programmed that old room, and just all the folks that he was able to bring in. But the new room works, and it works well. So no shade, as the young people will say about the new
young
room.
People.
I want to mention that all the songs we're hearing, you don't have to worry about frantically writing them down because they're all going to be listed for you on Twitter at Boston Public Radio, at our Twitter.
BOS Public Radio.
Excuse me, you're right. Boston, BOS Public Radio, at BOS Public Radio. So we're going to be right back with Brian McCreath from CRB, James Bennett II, Arts Culture Reporter, GBH, co-host of The Culture Show, and Emmett G. Price III, Dean of Africana Studies at Berkeley, with some more music. Emmett, of course, is also the co-host of GBH's All Revved Up podcast. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy live at the library. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, Facebook.com/GBH News for the 4,000th time. It's our first Wednesday back at the library. As a result, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 days a week, every week. And to celebrate at 2 o'clock, we have cake from the Great Flower Bakery, which we'd love to share with people who are here. We're back on Friday, and next Tuesday, Mayor Wu joins us from 1 to 2. We're back with, as one of my colleagues just typed me a note, said, Brian McCreath the first, James Bennett the second, and Emmett G. Price the third. Brian is, of course, from, it wasn't my line, I wish it was. Brian is from CRB. James is an arts and culture reporter, co-host of The Culture Show, and Emmett G. Price third is Dean of Africana Studies at Berkeley, and obviously half of the brilliant All Revved Up team. Mondays with us and on the podcast. Here we go.
And I want to just mention again, we're going to list all the music you are hearing on our Twitter page at BOSS, B-O-S, Public Radio, BOSS, Public Radio.
Jamie, why is our Twitter handle not Boston Public Radio?
We don't know. We don't know.
Okay.
Move on.
Can you get back to me later tonight?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
What answer could there be for that? I don't even know. Well, I just want to ask real quick before we move on to that. Have you ever, just out of curiosity, have you ever met Nicholas?
I have, yeah.
So his sound, just that little bit you played, it's like Chet Baker met Miles Davis, right? Yeah. And I just don't know if you've ever talked to him about playing his sound.
the type of horn that he plays, but both him and Christian Scott, who now goes by Chief, Christian Xian Adute. They have these unique instruments that are made of a certain type of material, brass, and Nicholas is very clever in his ability to change the timbre with his armature in terms of how he plays, and so it is a very unique sound.
Yeah. Well, and you're describing the intimacy of Scullers. That sounds going to just that's
it's going to be a great show.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I talked about music that can be easy listening in some settings, but you're not going to hear it in the concert. That was the last thing I did, Vivaldi. The next thing I'm going to talk about will never, ever, ever be easy listening.
Let's go.
It is something that is mind-blowing. Coming up next month, the Boston Symphony is doing this festival called Music of the Senses, and what the one I want to talk about here is by Olivier Messiaen, who was a composer in the 20th century for a long time in the 20th century. Who there's so many things to say about him. He was a devout Catholic, and the liturgy and the theology of the Catholic Church is deeply, deeply embedded in pretty much everything he wrote. He was a person who tracked down bird songs and literally transcribed them and made that his music. He was someone who was a synesthist. That's why he's in this festival. He was synesthetic, which means that when he hears things or heard things, he saw colors. It's sort of a to not to sound too blunt about it, but it's almost like wires are crossed in your brain that someone who is synesthetic will literally see colors or experience one sense when a different sense is triggered. Wow. So for a synesthist, you hear a piece of music or a musical tone, and uncontrollably you see a color in front of you. Gosh. And so synesthesia is this really fascinating concept that a lot of various composers have had, that have reported over the years. But for Olivier Messiaen, he was asked by Serge Koussevitzky of the Boston Symphony back in 1949 to write a new piece of music. And Koussevitzky said, pretty much anything you want. You make it as long as you want, make it as many players as you want, do whatever you want. And what he came up with is a piece called Tarangalila Symphony. The title is the fusion of two Sanskrit words that, let's see, my notes here. Messiaen describes as a love song, a hymn to joy, movement, rhythm, life, and death. Big concept.
Covers it all.
It covers it all.
Yep.
And so what I want to play for you here is a little part of it that is called love song, but don't let that deceive you. This is love in the sense of an ecstatic, overwhelming, all-consuming, inevitably leading to death kind of love. I mean, it's wild, crazy things. And what you'll hear in this is one of the real features of this piece. There's a ferociously difficult piano part that goes with this piece, but also the sound of what's called an onde martineau.
Huh?
An onde martineau.
I heard you.
What is
okay,
good.
What is it?
It was a very early electronic instrument. I think maybe developed in the 1920s, could be something like that. Yeah, it's an electronic instrument that when you hear what you're going to think of, and I don't mean to spoil the surprise or anything, but it's the kind of thing that you hear in 1950s science fiction movies.
Oh, okay.
The sounds of flying saucers. But so what we're going to hear now is this one section of the piece called Love Song, and this particular section is depicting the sort of polar opposites of carnal earthly love and transcendent spiritual love. Let's just listen to this little bit of Turangalila Symphony.
Romantic, isn't it?
Oh, man. Yeah.
What's the thing called one more time?
It's called an onde martenot. O-N-D-E-S.
Martenot.
Next word, M-A-R-T-E-N-O-T. French word, onde martenot. And so this piece is, it is like 75 or 80 minutes long. You talked about someone hearing a live piece of music and kind of getting that jolt.
Yeah.
I was literally sitting in the audience hearing this piece at the Berlin Philharmonic several years ago, and I was with someone who fell asleep in a moment like this and had exactly that happen. So this explosion happened, and she just jolted. So this is one of those things, sometimes I'm asked in my position, like if you hadn't been to the orchestra before, if you've never been to the symphony orchestra, what kind of concert would you recommend going to? And maybe the thing that I'm tempted to say is, go hear the Scottish Symphony or Schubert 9 or great orchestral masterpieces. But I almost want to say, go hear this. Go hear Turangalila Symphony and have your mind completely blown by what Olivier Messiaen does and what the players of the Boston Symphony will be doing. That particular week is, let's see, that's coming up in March 31st through, well, April 11th to the 14th is when they're doing Turangalila Symphony. Yuja Wang is the pianist, who is one of the great names of the concert stage these days. And Cécile Lartigot is the onde martenot virtuoso who will be joining Andres Nelson's in the Boston Symphony, Turangalila Symphony, for an experience you will never, ever forget.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
James?
Yeah. So I was told that I could have a selection from an artist that is not playing locally. I took liberty with that.
It's rather bold.
Yeah,
okay.
Bold. Joel Ross, vibraphonist, phenomenal musician. Unfortunately, no Boston stops in the future. I think he will be at the North Sea Jazz Festival this summer, and right now he's hanging around in the Netherlands and Utrecht and Rotterdam. So if you're over there, plan on being there in early April, go for it. But he has this new album, New Blues, and the conceit of it was that he wanted to, in his return to kind of like blues, kind of like, fundamentals in jazz music, he wanted to address what he thought was kind of this overfixation on time and tempo and the mechanics of like wonderful and like good music. He kind of thought the music might have been a little bit difficult, and he wanted to make this sound more accessible. Now, that's not to say he's like dumbing anything down or simplifying it. It's a really delicate thing to invite more people in to commune with music while still maintaining kind of like a sense of that artistic integrity. And so he's doing with Emmanuel Wilkins on alto sax, Jeremy Corin on piano, Kanoa Mendenhall on bass, Jeremy Denton on drums. And let's take a listen to this piece, Bach, God the Father in Eternity. This solemnic, is that a word? Hymn-like, reverential, bluesy, kind of like musical communion. So let's take a listen. And on this album, he also does a couple arrangements of some Coltrane tracks, Equinox and Central Park West. And in that kind of Coltrane vein, even though I wouldn't necessarily maybe call Equinox Central Park West, this kind of thing, but there's that spiritual intensity, to the music as it's being transmitted to the listener. And I've listened to this track like more times than I could count.
What's a vibraphone?
It's a percussion instrument, with metal. What do you want to call them? Blocks that are struck with mallets to produce.
Oh, okay.
You know what a xylophone?
Like a xylophone.
Yeah.
Xylophone.
Different flavor.
Yeah.
Usually bigger with resonators on the bottom.
That was wild.
It's just a phenomenal listen.
That's a great sound. That's a great sound.
Emmett, you're going to finish things off for us. Please.
Well, you know, I don't have the vocabulary that my two colleagues had. I mean, I learned about, sound turning into colors, and then the salt, whatever beautiful word you said. So I'm just going to take the moment to brag on my students at Berklee College of Music and Boston Conservatory. On April the 12th and the 13th, one of our ensembles that has been working on this concert for the entire year, going all the way back to September, will be doing a tribute concert of Michael Jackson songs, going all the way from his childhood with the Jackson 5 to the moment that he broke out as an artist with Motown Records, and then to the end of his life and some of the songs that he recorded. You talk about live music, live vocals, live choreography. A number of our students are actually styling the artists who are singing and doing everything. We have production assistants. I mean, our students are doing everything. And I got a glimpse of this. They have a IG handle, Michael Jackson Ensemble, if you want to follow them on Instagram and see what they're up to. But this is going to be absolutely amazing. And so I'm going to brag on them and invite all of you to be our very special guests on April 12th and April 13th at the Berklee Performance Center.
Okay, I want to ask you, because you're a reverend also, you teach at Berklee, you're a reverend.
Yes, I have to tell the truth.
So we can play Michael Jackson again, can we? I mean, because I think a lot of us are torn. I mean, his stuff is some of the greatest ever, some of his albums the greatest ever, and you kind of feel like you have to sneak around in the house and do it.
Yeah, I think everyone has to make a decision. Our goal is not to necessarily make the Michael Jackson estate rich.
Yeah.
Our goal is to feature the students and their interests,
and
as musicians. Great musicians.
Great music.
But as musicians, we always learn repertoire. And there's no way that you can do pop music without that Michael Jackson repertoire. So we do talk about it.
How do people get tickets to this thing?
Berklee Performance Center. I think Google it and it'll pop up on there, or go to the Berklee website and look up Berklee Performance Center. Tickets are live now, and you'll want to be there April 12th, April 13th.
That's fantastic.
I think maybe Emma can help us out there. April 12th, April 13th, maybe.
I got the hookup, Marjorie.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, that was fabulous and uplifting and great. It's great to see you all.
Thank you so much. It was so great of you guys coming in. It was such fun and such a nice break from all the the tough stuff going on every place else. Okay, we have been speaking with Brian McCreath, production director for CRB, James Bennett II, arts and culture reporter for GBH, co-host of The Culture Show, and Emmett G. Price III, Dean of Africana Studies at Berklee, co-host of GBH's All Revved Up podcast, and of course, our guest with Irene Monroe every week. Thank you all again for coming in.
It's great.
Coming up, we're going to lighten things up a bit. We know the price of food has gone up significantly over the past few years. Well, one multi-millionaire CEO has the answer. Let them eat cereal for dinner. You up with that? You want to try eating cereal for dinner because food is too expensive, or you're just kind of lazy? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, live at the library. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. As of today, 3 days a week at the BPL. Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. Next Tuesday, the mayor joins us from 1 to 2. So we go from Trump, the end of democracy, to the best live music in town, to cereal.
That's
Here
right.
we go. Inflation may have dropped over the past couple of months, but the cost of food isn't following suit. Grocery prices have jumped 25% over the past 4 years, outpacing overall inflation of 19%. That's according to the Washington Post. And while gas and a high cost of housing generally saturate the media coverage, more than 2/3 of voters say inflation has hit them hardest through higher food prices. Well, here's Gary Pilnick. He's the CEO of Kellogg's Brands. He allegedly has an answer.
The cereal category has always been quite affordable, and it tends to be a great destination when consumers are under pressure. So some of the things that we're doing is first messaging. We got to reach the consumer where they are. So we're advertising about cereal for dinner. If you think about the cost of cereal for a family versus what they might otherwise do, that's going to be much more affordable.
What a sweet guy. Gary Pilnick makes $1 million in his salary, $4 million in added incentives. I guess he's not spooning up what he's been dishing out to consumers, but who knows? Maybe he's an all-brand kind of guy. Lines are open at 877-301-8970. Do you like the idea of cereal for dinner? And is it really saving that much money when you consider how much smaller the boxes are and how much more expensive they have become? We want to hear about, we can not just limit to cereal. We can talk about your breakfast for dinner habits and how you're making your dollar stretch the most. Is it Honey Smacks that is getting you through? 877-301-8970. So I read the following, I think, in the Washington Post. Honey Smacks. Eating Honey Smacks for dinner, which I have to admit I never heard of, but they're very popular, is the equivalent of having 2 Krispy Kreme donuts for dinner. So I would assume that's not terribly good for you, even if it's cheaper than buying, I don't know, a couple of breasts of chicken or something. Hello?
Yes, I think it's absolutely true.
Well, good. 877-301-8970. Cereal for dinner is our top. When was the last time you had cereal for dinner? Never?
I think sometimes I've eaten grape nuts with bananas on.
I didn't even know you liked
raisins on
grape
top.
nuts.
Yeah,
I'm
I
a
like
grape nuts kind of guy.
I like grape nuts, but not very much because it's cold. If I'm going to have something like homey and comfort
like
food
an
for
oatmeal
dinner,
kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not going to be cold cereal. But I think this is something. If you're young, if you're in college, or if you're in your 20s and you're just not into. I think a lot of people eat cereal for dinner.
When was the last time you bought a box of cereal?
I buy grape nuts and I buy
and
granola.
how much do they cost right now?
Well, I didn't know they cost $7 or
$8, that sort of thing for a smaller box.
I don't know they cost that much. I should pay more attention to what they cost. But you know what I was really upset about?
No.
Some of the cereals I thought were okay are really terrible. Like Honey Nut Cheerios, 12 grams of added sugar. I used to give that to my kids all the time.
How about Corn Flakes are one of the worst too?
Corn Flakes are terrible. Raisin Bran.
I knew Raisin Bran was not good.
Yeah, I knew Frosted Mini Wheats, frosted things. That's always kind of bad. This frosted on the top. But
Did you see Zoe's note?
What?
Does cream of wheat count as cereal? I eat it for dinner at 3 p.m. all the time. Zoe is our colleague who goes to bed at 5 o'clock?
Yeah, but cream
and
of
eats
wheat.
dinner at 3 o'clock.
Cream of wheat, because it's warm. I mean, it's warm.
No,
and
that's the
oatmeal
thing.
is
You're right
warm.
about that.
That makes a difference to me. Cream of wheat, and then what you do is you melt the bananas on top of it. And
Don't steal my. Don't even try stealing that.
Well, you told me about that. So
I am the creator of
you're the
that.
creator of that. Well,
Thank
that's what you claim.
Appreciate
and then you know what you put on top of it?
No.
Heavy cream.
Oh,
it's really good.
That makes
really
it even
good
better
for you. Yeah, really good for you, but it's really delicious. And raisins. Excuse me. 877-301-8970. So the question is really, is eating cereal for dinner like giving up, like tossing? It's like the whole thing about the great Diane White column for the Boston Globe, where she said that when your first pair of elastic waist pants means you've given up. I mean, is eating dinner for cereal kind of like that? You've kind of given up and thrown in the towel, or would you not do it because they're so expensive? The cereals are so expensive, and as Jim said, they've shrunk in the box, and they're not. Shrinkflation has impacted cereals big time.
It's a great word. Does that nail exactly what that is?
But part of the reason is price gouging, obviously, because once the prices go up, they don't go back down again. But part of it is they have happily raise wages of a lot of people making minimum wage too. So the people that are working in the supermarkets and stuff are making slightly more money, which I'm glad about.
877-301-8970. The Onion did a little piece titled Kellogg's CEO says financially struggling Americans should eat cereal for dinner. And they have a faux person who says, sorry, but the Yoplait CEO already convinced me to start eating yogurt for dinner. 877-301-8970. I would like to say, not that you asked, I am okay with almost anything for breakfast or lunch, but I think I'm where you are. I think having a warm experience at dinner is a really important final meal of the day kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, well,
What are you laughing about?
We have some protests. Better off eating cat food for dinner than cereal. Ooh! And Godfrey from Medford says college students have been eating cereal for dinner for millennia, and that is true.
Ramen is sort of taking its place.
Noodles, because that again is warm. But you could talk about the amount of sugar in the cereal. How about the amount of salt in ramen?
Exactly. Yeah, but it's like 5 cents for dinner. I think that's a lure too.
Joel in Connecticut says the thing which goes well with cereal for dinner is a deep, unending sense of dread. Perfect for
our
an election
exactly.
year. Yeah. 877-301-8970 is the number. Do you eat cereal for dinner?
Me?
Yes.
No, I need a hot kind of experience.
Oh, listen to this.
What's that?
Laura from Lexington says, Marjorie, warm your grape nuts and your milk, or in my case, heavy cream, in the microwave.
I've warmed grape nuts. That's a bad idea.
It is?
It just doesn't work. Yeah, I'm really, as you know, I'm a huge grape nuts fan. And a lot of people were very kind. Remember when they disappeared during COVID and people delivered them to the front desk to the guard for me, which is really kind, I should say. They were sold out. That and toilet paper were pretty much gone. Heating them up is not a happening thing for me.
Allison from Sharon said, I actually had Cheerios for dinner last night.
Wow.
First time eating cereal for dinner ever because husband was supposed to make dinner and he, quote unquote, forgot.
Let's go to Grant in Rhode Island. We're talking about cereal for dinner. And we're doing this because the CEO of Kellogg says we should. Hi, Grant.
Hi, can you hear me?
I think if you said, can we hear you, we can, yes.
Oh, I apologize. All right.
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Okay. No problem. So here's the thing about the cereal thing. I've heard about this before, and I've heard about breakfast for dinner.
I love breakfast.
Breakfast for dinner sounds terrific, and I'll tell you why. I'm not a nutritionist, but from a nutritional point of view, your choices might be a bit more expansive, like eggs and bread, and you get more fats and proteins and stuff that you need as a human being. When you talk about cereal for dinner, we're talking about mostly and I don't rule out. I'm part of the school of thought that you don't rule out any kind of food as bad or good. But think about how much protein you actually would get in a bowl of cereal.
It's like a sugar bomb. It's like eating a couple of donuts, essentially.
Well, go ahead and have a puffed wheat cereal that has no sugar. You're still you're getting all your protein, which everybody needs a certain amount from the milk. And how much are you getting in the milk? Maybe let's say top if you're thinking about that.
Grant, have you ever eaten cardboard?
No.
I am serious. I would argue puffed wheat or puffed whatever it is and cardboard have a very similar taste. Would you disagree?
Listen, no. But what I'm saying is it doesn't even matter. I'm not even talking about the added sugar. I'm saying if you even have something that doesn't have, if you're just having this one straight carbohydrate based meal and maybe a little fat and protein, it just sounds like something that's very deficient in other things you need. In fact, puffed wheat might be worse because it's just air.
It is air. Grant, that was an excellent call. Thank you. By the way, breakfast for dinner, which I shouldn't have even brought up, but I'm glad, Grant, that is a whole different experience.
Well,
you can
we have lots
of
people talking about waffles or pancakes or
about
hash
an
or
omelet?
eggs. Yeah, I like pancakes for dinner, ricotta pancakes. Those are the ones I really like.
Do you find ricotta pancakes?
Yes,
you make those, which
I do.
find to be fairly hard to believe. Do you, when our colleagues make comments that are really strange, what do you, for example, Hannah just typed us a note, and you say to yourself, how did Hannah decide to tell us this? She said, I used to choke on shredded wheat as a child because it was so dry. You know?
Cry for help, Jim.
That is a cry for help. By the way, you know one of the great inventions ever was, speaking of shredded wheat, I don't know if Hannah's had this experience, when the mini shredded wheats came out. Do you remember that?
I do.
You used to have to buy them as like a pillow of shredded wheat. And then they had the little ones, which was a whole different experience.
She answered.
What's
why
that?
She decided
this is Jamie speaking.
Oh, okay.
What did he say?
He said she decided to share it because you, Jim, have created such an open and collaborative environment where the staff feels they can share whatever it is with you.
Well, that's nice to say. And in that spirit, if any of our other coworkers
I really don't
have
think
almost
that's the
choked
case.
on their cereal as a child, we'd like to hear
I'm
from
a little
you.
suspicious
Fred
about
in
that
Belmont, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling. What's up?
Hey, guys. Good to talk to you. How are you
too.
doing?
Thanks. Good.
So people shouldn't be eating cereal for breakfast. Let's just start there.
Go ahead. That's a good one.
That is true.
And this is sort of the let them eat cake moment of our time.
Yes.
Because with the massive transfer of wealth and all the companies and their blood funnels, whatever that phrase is, it's kind of aggravating to hear people suggesting we eat breakfast cereal for dinner.
Well, it's not people. It's a head of Kellogg's. I think there might be a self-interest involved. Do you think so? Or I think so. You know?
Yeah. Well, I guess a Citizens United person. Yeah, I guess so.
That's that's a wonderful point. Citizens United, by the way, is the Supreme Court case that screwed up campaign finance reform. Thank you, Fred, for your call.
Listen to this one. Saute grape nuts with butter, olive oil, and shallots.
I really don't think so.
You don't think so?
Shallots?
Yep. Those are
onions.
Yeah.
I know what a shallot is.
That's what they
onions
say.
and raisin and what's that called? What is it?
Onions, butter, olive oil, and shallots.
With what?
That's grape nuts.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, we have someone that just said that was a great idea.
I think they're trolling us. So, by the way,
Okay.
here are 7 cereals. Marjorie touched on this that don't qualify as healthy according to the FDA. Raisin Bran is not surprising, right? A lot of sugar.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my favorite cereal when I was a kid. Corn Flakes is shocking to me. Special K. Weren't you raised to think Special K was like the healthy thing? It's got all the vitamins allegedly and all.
I don't know. When I was a kid, I ate Rice Krispies.
Horrible. Rice Krispies and puff wheat are the same thing. Just tasteless.
I mean, lots of people give their kids Cheerios, but not Honey Nut Cheerios.
Did you ever have puff wheat at Magoni's when it was still open? No, I'm just curious. Thank you.
Here's a texter who said, this is Kim in Boston, says, cereal is not breakfast for dinner. Breakfast for dinner is an actual meal you can make on purpose, while cereal is the I don't have any time and I don't have any money and I'm too exhausted to cook the dinner of champions.
Can I just say to you, since you mentioned breakfast at the dinner again, a cheese omelet, you with me so far?
Yep.
Lox and bagel, a high-quality bagel with lox and cream cheese to die for, as they say. You ever had that kind of dinner? Oh, you don't eat lox.
I don't like lox. No.
Oh, forget the whole thing.
Evan in Newton, what do you think?
By the way, Mark in the car text, I think this is for Hannah. He said, I almost choke on my cereal as an adult. I hope you appreciate that, Hannah. That was for you. Go ahead.
Evan in Newton, thank you for calling.
It's going off the rails here. Go ahead, Evan. What's up?
So I have cereal for breakfast and dinner and even dessert quite often. It might sound crazy, but I find it to be really healthy. And what I use is I don't use regular milk. I use flax milk or oat milk. And I eat flax Raisin Bran, which is super healthy, delivers a lot of nutritional value, and is actually part of me getting my own cholesterol down. And I think when you guys look at like food replacements maybe for dinner, like cheeseburgers are super unhealthy, pizza's super unhealthy, chicken wings are super unhealthy. There's a lot of unhealthy things in our life, and cereal doesn't need to just be branded unhealthy because there's a lot of sugary versions.
But you know the alternative to cereal for dinner is not just pizza. You know that, correct? Thank you. I appreciate that, Evan.
But there are a lot of healthy cereals. You're right. You can also make your own granola and make it right in a little tray.
How many times have you done that, Marjorie?
I used to do it all the time.
I don't
actually.
believe that.
No, I did.
What'd you put in it? Evan, thanks for the call. What'd you put in a granola?
You put
She's
nuts.
making it up.
You put nuts in there. You put some butter in there.
Butter
you put,
in there.
I forget what else.
Sugar.
You put. No, you didn't put sugar in.
You don't?
No, you don't.
How many years ago did you make granola at home?
I used to make it when my kids were little.
Is that true?
Yeah. It's easy to make.
Wow.
Yeah. And someone from Marty in North Cambridge suggests the Indian dish umpa for dinner.
I don't know it.
UPPMA,
Don't know
upma for
it.
dinner.
No.
Cream of wheat, but with more dinnery spices.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's also probably warm, right?
Yes, it would be warm.
Thank you. I appreciate
Ken from
it.
Fall River, what do you think, Ken?
Hey, Ken.
How you doing?
I think
Fine,
fine.
thank you.
Thank you.
I eat Best Buy instant oatmeal in a packet that you pour hot water in.
That's really horrible.
Yeah.
That is really bad.
I've done that,
And crown
Ken.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And crown it with generic maple syrup.
Wow.
Sometimes bananas.
When you're in a good day,
And,
you're going wild. Yeah.
It reminds me,
Yeah.
his comment reminds me of that public service announcement where the poor working mom comes home to 2 kids and she gives them broth for dinner. And one kid is like eating it. The other kid is like looking up at his mother like, he's being cheated out of a life. But she's like sort of unconscious of it. And she's smiling away. And then the last scene is her washing dishes in the sink after she puts the kids to bed.
Yeah.
After their broth dinner?
It's a beautiful story, Ken. Made me weep.
Ken.
So, Ken, how does it feel when you rip the pack? In my experience, on the rare occasion when I've had instant oatmeal, is when you rip the packet open, all this dust sprays up into the air. Have you had that experience?
Those are the dust mites coming out to feed
That's
on
very
you.
appetizing.
Those are dust mites.
That's really great.
Hey, you're
By
in
the way,
another-
Ken, don't take this personally. Instant oatmeal is about as horrible as any food on the planet.
Well, it's better than,
despite
it's
Ken's
better than the
embrace.
broth that the poor children were eating before they had to
That
go to
was
bed.
a very sad story,
It was very
too.
sad
Thank you,
story,
Ken,
Ken. But
for
thank you
sharing
for sharing it with us.
Oh, wait a second. Zoe has another one. I didn't know if they still have these. Remember you could buy like 6 little
Yes, I
boxes?
do.
They still have that?
Yeah.
You buy the
I
little
don't know if
boxes
they
of
still have
cereal.
it.
You pour the milk right into the damn
Yep.
thing. In any case, Big Cereal really reinvented the wheel. That one, as a kid, I was so impressed. She said, 4 for $2. Wait, is that now, Jamie, at Market Basket? That is really exciting. Okay. Do we have time for one more, unfortunately?
Well, FedEx Pete is saying cereal is what his kids eat for dinner when they don't like what we cooked for dinner. So if they're complaining, it's a peanut butter sandwich.
It's a sugar bomb.
Yeah, they could give
Marjorie.
him a peanut butter sandwich instead, I suppose.
Okay, we have time for one more quick one.
Okay.
Scott, it's you. You have 30 seconds. Go.
Hey, there's a children's song that I learned you reminded me of.
Yeah.
It's about shredded wheat, and there's a verse that goes, when mother's sleeping soundly, dreaming sugar sweet, she chews on father's whiskers and thinks they're shredded wheat.
What a great end to the show, Scott. That was fabulous. Thank you for
Scott.
sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. Scott, thank you.
That is wonderful. Okay, we are done. We are done for
yes,
today. A lot of
we are
people
done.
saying kasha, that K-A-S-H-A,
Kasha, I think
kasha,
it
whatever
is,
it
isn't
is,
it? Yeah.
that's really healthy.
It is?
I haven't tried that.
Okay, fine.
Okay, we are done. But thank
We're
you very
done.
much for listening to another
Yes.
edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by NBC's Chuck Todd, comedian and podcaster Mark Maron.
Oh,
I'm
that's
so
great.
excited
Me
about
too.
that.
It's
He's got a great podcast, and he's very funny. Ahead of a show, he's going to be at the Chevalier Theater. Where is that? In
Medford. Thank you, Aiden.
Chevalier
It's a
Theater
great
in
theater,
Medford.
by the
It
way.
is a
It's
great
really
theater.
nice.
Former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral, NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, and MIT's John Gruber. We want to thank our great crew, especially today, to Hannah. I think you were making fun of her cereals, Jim.
No, I was making fun. You don't
were
have to
making
think
fun.
I was.
Okay.
Yes, I was.
But she was traumatized by that experience.
Apparently
I think
she was,
I think you should be
yes.
empathetic.
Yep.
Our crew, besides Hannah Loss, includes Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss with the serial issue. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jane Bologna. Special thanks to the BPL team, Steve Baracci, Maddie Geyer, Sandra Lopez-Burke, who got the cake over there, and Carly Corcoran.
Aren't you supposed to say, for those of you who endured
yes.
the pain of the cereal discussion, please stick around for, there it is, for cake from the Great Flour Bakery.
Yeah. That's
Sandra,
Sandra
thanks
over
for
there.
doing that,
Sandra
bud.
Lopez-Burke has got the cake, and we're very excited about having some. It's from the Flour Bakery. No better place to get a cake.
No better place to get a cake.
They do have really great
So we're
pastry
here
there.
3 days a week now.
We're
What do you
3
think
days
of
a week.
that?
I think that's swell.
You do?
Yes, I do.
I do too.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browdy.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you much to the people who came
Thank
down to
you
the
for
Boston
coming.
Public
We
Library.
appreciate it.
We will be back again on Friday.
We will.
And that's it.
And don't choke on your shredded wheat.
Don't choke on
Those
your
are my
shredded wheat.
final words today.
Have a great
See
afternoon.
you tomorrow. Bye.